Okay, so this is actually a very exciting stream. We're going to be doing a roundup of what's been going on in the Crazyhouse World Championship candidates. And as you can see here, we've had quite a few matches played already uh, among these top 13 players in the world, excluding, of course, the world champion Jasugi 99. And the players are in the order drawn by Jan Lee's daughter live on stream a few weeks ago. Jan Lee himself, she drew him first, quite a coincidence. 264 Brock, who's also known as Cabbage on Discord. Bugzilla, also from Australia, like Jan Lee. Opperwazen from Holland, currently in the Gran Canaria. Zixon from Sweden. Old Bughouse legend. Blitzbullet from America. Burp Cow from Canada. TheFinnisher from Finland. Kleerkast, also from the Netherlands, like Opper, and who will be streaming later tonight. So he'll be streaming in 3 hours. So check out his stream. He'll be streaming the match Blitzbullet against Opperwazen. Dog Answer, who's a mystery. Katask, to whom Dog Answer is an answer, I guess, who's also a mystery. And mariorton from Mexico, I believe. So that's the lineup. And so far, Katask has got a narrow lead with an 80% win rate in the standings. Opperwazen's got more points, but he's played one match more. So Katask is doing very well, given that the two matches he's played have been against Bugzilla and Zixon, two probably top half contenders among these 13 players. So let me check the chat. Thanks again, Apostatlet, and hi there, Zaraza. And thanks, Apostatlet, for pointing out I was muted at the beginning of this attempted stream. So what we're going to do in this stream is we're going to recap the only 3 matches. So all of these matches actually have been covered by the real Ganesh from Sweden. And I'm just going to put his details in the Twitch chat. So that's his Twitch and that's his YouTube. And also by Cabbage, aka 264 Brock, who's one of the candidates. And I'm just going to put his details also in the Twitch chat. And the reigning champion is Jasugi99, previously known as 12teen, who was the runner-up in 2017 and who won the 2020, who didn't participate in 2018. He beat Opper in an exhibition match. Opper was the 2019 champion. He beat Opper in an exhibition match in 2019. He then won in 2020, and he is the champion who's awaiting the winner of this candidates to play the final, the grand final at the end of this year. So what we're going to do in this stream is it turns out those 2 streamers I just mentioned have basically been streaming everything, but Kleerkast, I'll just give his details. So do go away and subscribe to all these people and set alerts so you get information. These people will be, Kleerkast will be streaming in 3 hours the match Blitzbullet against Opperwazen, which is big. These 2, you see, they both took down 264 Brock, 6.5, 3.5. So they're really neck and neck. Blitzbullet currently in 3rd place with 75% win rate, Opper with 78%. So they're really neck and neck in the race. So they'll be playing in 3 hours tonight and Kleerkast will be streaming that. So something to look forward to. So what we'll be doing is, well, it turns out all of these matches were covered live by those 2 streamers I mentioned. Also, one of them was covered by Kleerkast, but he hasn't put it on YouTube yet. In fact, all the streams are all up on a YouTube playlist. And I just put the details up. Or if people are on my YouTube, you just check out my playlist and you can find the information there. It's called the 2021 Crazyhouse World Championship playlist. There are 60 odd videos. So all of these matches were covered live, which is amazing, apart from 3 of them. And since these guys did such a good job, I took some time out in the last few days to do some analysis on those last 3 matches, which would be mariorton against 264 Brock, TheFinnisher against Kleerkast, and Blitzbullet against Dog Answer. So what I'm going to do in this stream, I'm going to show you some of the highlights from some of these matches so far, and I'm going to give you proper coverage of those 3 matches that didn't get love when they were played live. Hi there, Seaflower, welcome. And if I had time, and realistically I wouldn't, I would also go on to tell you about how Jasugi99 destroyed the candidates last year. But maybe I'll leave that for another time. So that's a future stream, which should have happened last year, but it never happened. So let's show you some of these let's show you some of these highlights. So I'd like to show you first Kleerkast mated Blitz. Kleerkast had a tough time against Blitzbullet, but he found a very nice mate in this position. So he has a bishop and a rook in hand. And I seem to have, this doesn't seem to be the starting position, sorry. This is the starting position. So he found a nice mate in this position with just a couple of bishops in hand. So he picked up the rook, and the problem is you would think maybe a bishop here and a rook here, but the problem is this knight. So his really neat idea is go bishop here instead, leaving this square free for the knight to come in for checkmate. So you see that this bishop therefore has to be taken. And if it's taken by the queen, then you pick up a queen with check. I need help. What's the mate? So if rook takes, bishop at g3. Oh yes, of course. So this is what I missed. The knight can swing in knight f2. So that's if the rook takes, and so even though the knight is, you can't simply go bishop and queen because the knight's defending, but you can just go bishop here, knight swings in for checkmate. So that's nice. So he has to take with the king, and then it's not so easy. But there's I'll just play through the line. It's bishop f2. He tries to stay away, and then I'm actually looking at the engine just to get the answer here. I'm going to go rook at h2 to try and draw him in. So if he goes knight takes, it's knight here checkmate. So he has to go king takes. Huh, I didn't see this at all. Queen at g1. And again, if he goes knight takes, you just got... oh, this is very difficult, but okay. Yeah, if he goes knight takes, you have bishop here and knight here checkmate. Okay, this is just really difficult. But so you go rook takes, but then you have bishop here and again knight here checkmate. Okay, so either way you've got... So really quite complicated. Okay, so that's why in this position you can't take with the queen. So he took with the knight, then take... No. Oh, that was it, yeah. So a much simpler mate in that case if you took with the knight. So it's just a very nice little mate that Kleerkast found. In this initial position, it looks like the knight is actually protecting everything, but it's not. So Apostatlet says the stream is not very stable. Are other people finding this as well? You can let me know. Difficult to know what I can do. That's UK internet problems. If I just have a look at settings, my video settings, just trying to see how bitrate only 800. So I don't, yeah, so it's a shame if it's not working properly. Yeah, am I back? Maybe, let me see. Let me know if I'm back. Okay, so just to go over this again, this is quite a tricky little mate. So you pick up the rook, and you can't just not take this because here, rook here would be checkmate. So you have to take it, and then you don't go bishop at g3. Apparently bishop at g3 also mates, but it's more tricky. You go bishop at g1, so you're threatening mate. So this has to be taken, and if takes with knight, it's a simple mate, as happened in the game. But if takes with queen, it's also a mate. And the way it's a mate is if you take with the rook, then it's a very simple mate. It's bishop here, knight here. Then it's more complicated. So bishop here, check. If here, then it would just be knight here, checkmate. So king here, knight here will be checkmate. So he has to come this way, to here or here. And wherever he goes, here or here, okay, maybe I'll do it a different way to last time. Put a queen down here. Oh, yeah, I'm seeing this sort of, I'm getting connection issues myself. And if so, he's now in a box, and you go rook here takes, bishop here, knight here, and it's exactly the same if you took back with the rook. Oh no, it's not. So queen at g1, rook takes, rook at h2, and he can't take with the knight because this will be checkmate, so he has to take with the king, but then there's bishop here check and knight here checkmate. So it was a very beautiful little pattern. Hi there, Joanna, and thanks so much for the subscription. Yeah, I'm sorry if UK internet is just not good enough. We'll persevere a little while, and hopefully it's okay. But okay, so we're first just going to look at some highlights, then we're going to look at some games. Okay, then next highlight I want to show is Opperweisen against Dog Answer. My purpose here is not actually to show the whole game, but to show a missed mate that Dog Answer had. So this is a very standard e4, e5 line, and I'm gonna turn. No, it's okay. I'm hiding engine, but it should be white is better. But at some point, white makes an error, and I haven't analyzed exactly where. But rook at h7, so bishop takes, so king takes g3. White is still good here. Bishop at f4. So this turns out to be the mistake. So here, if white just goes knight takes f4, e takes f4, and king h2, look at all the pieces white has in hand, and black just doesn't have enough to mate white. But here Opper made a slight error and went here, and suddenly black has a big attack. Not just a big attack, actually has mate. King g1, but he didn't. So queen h2 is correct. So basically, from this position, it's actually mate in 11. 1, 2, 3, all correct. Knight takes e3, 4, correct. So now it's mate in 7. Bishop takes knight, correct. Now it's mate in 6. So why can't you block on f2? You can't block on f2 because of knight here check and queen here checkmate. So he went here, and now it's mate in 6. And the mate goes as follows. Queen h4 check, and you can't block here because knight at g3 is the problem. So you have to block on h3. Knight at g3 anyway, and you pick up the rook with check. And of course you have to take it, because otherwise rook at h2 will be mate if you just step back, so you have to take it. But now simple mate, with a pawn and a rook. So a really nice mate, but Dog Answer missed this mate, missed queen h4 in this position. Queen h4 is mating. Instead he played at f3, and now Opper has mate. Isn't that impressive? You have to take this, because if you just step up, queen here is just mate in 1, so you have to take it. But now knight here check, knight g5 check. So tossing that knight aside, because you want to take the rook with check. So if you take the knight, this rook lands with check, the back rank is weak. You can't step up or step down because rook at h7 follows, so you have to take it. But now there's pawn h7. If you step up, a queen is landing here. I'll show you that line first. Queen at g8, king here. Now you have a rook as well, so here, and queen here is checkmate. So that's simple enough. So you have to basically take this pawn, but then we use the knight. Knight comes here, king here. Standard trick. If he steps up, queen here is checkmate, so you have to take it to magnet the king into the corner, and then this is mate. So what actually happened in the game was that dog answer saw this and kept running, but now a second knight comes, and second knight comes, a queen trade with check, and queen is checkmate. So a very nice comeback win from Oppa, having actually hung a mate, so quite beautiful. The third highlight position is actually a game which a game which Opera annotated. So all the things I'm looking at, by the way, are in the following study, which is like accompanying the stream. So I'll just share the study. But I don't want to distract you with the moves on the right hand side, which is why I've covered them up for now. Okay, so but I'll just talk through this study. So Oppa is white, but we're looking from Dog Answer's view because Dog Answer played a very beautiful game here. And Oppa says in this position, knight c6 is a very nice response to knight f3, because if you go bishop f5, the kind of line that can happen is as follows. And he just plays through. So the knight on h4 hits this bishop, and that would actually create a big weakness on e6. So you must defend that bishop. Takes, takes. Now the threat here is if you just castle, there's knight takes pawn, pawn takes, and bishop here check. Picking up this knight and this e6 weakness is really a problem. So you can't really castle. So instead you might go something like queen e7 to defend this weak e6 square. But then bishop here, the threat is bishop takes knight, pawn takes, and knight takes pawn. It's kind of annoying, so we have to defend that knight. And one way of doing it would be, say, with another knight, but then there's even more pressure. Now what do? I mean, one way of doing it is defending this pawn with a knight, because really this attack on the knight is really an attack on the center. So we defend our center and develop, and then this nice move comes e4. Looks like it's giving away a pawn, but the idea is, what's the idea? The idea is to take this, is to disturb our knight, disturb the knight, and take the knight on h6, and even take this pawn on d5. And the idea here, white is castled, white is safe, and this is a big weakness. So for example, so one idea would be knight takes d5 in this position. Another idea is rook e1, but then actually we could just block and get very safe. So probably the best move in this position, this is Oppa writing, is knight at b5. And the idea here is if we take the knight, he takes back, and the threat is renewed of bishop takes e6, and we can't take back that piece because of a knight drop on g7 picking up our queen. So just to run through, this is, he said, Oppa was saying why bishop f5 might not be so strong because of these ideas of attacking these two squares here and trying to open up a weakness on e6. And he goes into detail about how that would work. So we try and defend the weakness, but you see how eventually that weakness actually comes up anyway. I should maybe promote this variation, like the knight at b5 line as being the nicest. And so maybe what you do is you defend the knight, this square with another knight, but actually black is not very stable here. You can actually got another knight landing here instead, picking up the rook. It's all very... so it's not like black is completely worse, but I'd say white is certainly better. If I were to continue here, bishop takes, knight takes, king f7, bishop takes e6, check comes anyway, knight takes, and you want to go queen takes, but the problem with queen takes is, so the idea of bishop f5 is a sort of cheeky little move. You can't take it because there's a knight would pick up our queen. But okay, that's just going way too deep. So this is just Oppa going really deep, just to say why he liked the move knight c6 from Dog Answer. Hi there, Oppa, who says, I'm not so sure about exactly what the value of bishop f5 or knight c6, but yeah, it's just a nice illustration. Those knight g7 check drops always kill me, says Apostatlet. So how the game went, I mean, this is a really tough game. And Oppa says here, Another way of playing this in this position is knight c3. He says, but he lost his black to Jasugi 99 in this position. And you could transpose into this sort of position here. And I've seen TheFinnisher play this. We'll see this later. TheFinnisher played this kind of setup against Kleerkast. Bishop f4 has also been played. And the idea is you get the bishop out, then push e6 and develop. And gosh, there's a lot of analysis here. Sometimes white can go e3. Apparently this is also a decent line for white, even though the bishop is blocked. Surprisingly. Yeah, that's the sort of those sorts of ideas. So yeah, well, knight f7 straight away, winning the queen. Anyway, it's feels very uncomfortable for black. So that's if you take here. Okay, I'm kind of going way too deep for my own good here. But okay, so this whole, maybe check out the study. So this is all if we go knight c3 as white, but what happened in the game was this instead, bishop g5, chasing the bishop away. As I said, I think this is nice, and then fianchetto, and we'll see that's what TheFinnisher has certainly done at least once. But f6, bishop d2, develop, bishop d6, h3, bishop f5, knight h4, bishop d6, takes, bishop d3, and here Oppa suggests quite a nice move is queen g4, attacking these two. How do you defend both these pawns? You could put a knight here, defending them both, but that's not very impressive. So probably the way to do it is to go king f7, which looks weird, but it actually works. It defends everything quite nicely. And then if white were to go bishop d3, then go f5. Black is probably okay here. But bishop d3 immediately is what happened, and f5, bishop at b3, and then a very creative move from Oppa with knight at g3. And Oppa says if not bishop h4, if not bishop at f5, bishop h4 is the standard move. Oh yeah, in this position, bishop h4 would be the standard move in this position. Absolutely, yeah. So slight variation of this. And then a very creative move from Oppa with this knight at g3 idea. So Oppa says bishop d2 is okay, but bishop d2 is a bit unusual if there's no bishop on f5, he says. So knight d3, very creative move. Takes. I like this idea, just opening up king f1. And black really wants a knight on f2, and we'll see he somehow gets it. So it steps back with the bishop. He gets a trade of knights, and he gets the knight on f2. Don't know if he could have avoided it, but that's certainly looking promising for black. And white's getting some counter on the black king, but I think this is now looking very uncomfortable for the white king. At d7, simply steps aside, knight at g4, knight steps back with the check, king g1, at f2, takes, king takes, queen h4 check, steps back again, and in this position, dog answer went for knight f2, threatening rook h1 mate, which is very strong. But it turns out dog answer had an even more crushing move, which is knight at f3. Knight at f3. So why is this so strong? Because if you go this way, rook here is checkmate. And if you go this way, then rook here is checkmate. So you have to take it. But then rook at h1. And again, you have to take it. If you try and sidestep, it's like this. It's checkmate. So you have to take it. But then queen takes pawn, and notice this is a powerful. This is all defended, so you can't block. You just simply take any blocker, and it would mate. So king steps aside, queen here check, and bring the rook in, and take any blocker. So knight f3 was missed. Instead, knight f2 was played in the game, but still white is basically lost here. Oppa threw in a check. trying to defend this h file, but missed the immediate rook at h1 checkmate, or well, just white just resigned in this position, seeing that he was mated already. So very, very strong game from Dog Alsa, who went down to Opperwesen but won this very beautiful game. So here, this is a game between Zixon as white and Variance only as black. And the point of the game is just to show you a move later on, but I'll just play through the whole game because Zixon gave some commentary. So it's a Scandinavian, and it's being played as a gambit, giving up 2 pawns here. Bishop drops back to e2, and e5. And here, Zixon says he didn't play knight c3, as would be more usual, bishop c5, and pawn drop here, which is the main line, because he was afraid that Variance only had prep in this line. So instead he played the more unusual knight f3, e4, and knight e5, just to try and avoid prep. Bishop here, queen here, so hitting this knight, check, and defends the knight, and now black gets a pawn on g2, which looks very threatening. Rook g1, at d6, so trying to chase away the knight because then the bishop falls. e3, counterattack on the queen. And here Zixon says the queen sacrifice doesn't work, as we can see in the game continuation. So black gives up the queen. Knight at f3, obviously if king e2, knight takes rook, so that's a bit dangerous. It takes. So now there are lots of threats, like queen at e2 is mate, as a mate threat. So the bishop draws back, defending the mate threat and looking to put a queen on f7. Bishop e6 happened in the game, and at d6, king takes d6, and this is really the reason I'm showing this game, is in this position, white has mate in 2, but Zixon did not see this mate. So that's really the reason I'm showing this game. Mate in 2 for white in this position. Maybe someone in the chat can see it. See you, Joanna, who says, gotta run, thanks for the Crazyhouse content. See you guys later. Can anyone spot the mate in 2? So we have a knight and a queen in hand, and the king has basically 3 free squares to run to. So Opper's seen it, obviously. How to stop the king running to these 3 squares? Is anyone going to give the move in the chat? Let's see how we're getting on. So I'm hoping we're featured on Lichess. Let's see. Yes, we're the only stream on Lichess. So good timing. So can anyone see how to trap this? So this is the thing. The king has 3 escape squares. We can actually block off those 3 escape squares with a single move, which is also a check. So can anyone see it? It's a very thematic idea. The king has run forward. We want to stop it from running back again. How do we do it? Apostatlet says knight at f5 check. So yeah, that could be taken, unfortunately, and it would only block away one of those squares. So what happened in the game was just pawn takes pawn, and again the king runs back. There's actually a beautiful move to stop the king running to any of these 3 squares. And Apostatlet says he might have quite a lot of delay. Okay, I'm going to give you the final 10 seconds for someone to find it. How to trap the king. Okay, so yeah, Zixon didn't find it. Only Opera in the chat has basically seen it, and he saw it ages ago. The answer is queen at d8, and that blocks off all those three squares. So the king is effectively in a box, has nowhere to go. So you can block this however you like. You don't take this way because that would open up this way. You take this way, and it's checkmate. So that's the answer. You put the queen on the back rank, blocking off the run back, and that's a very thematic idea in Crazyhouse. To keep the king, to push the king towards the opponent pieces. And a queen is very good at blocking off squares, so it's a very thematic idea, as Zixon says. Queen of d8 is a very instructive mate, cutting off the king's escape squares, he writes. But instead this happened, and okay, he got the mate eventually, like so. And then he says, this would have eventually led to mate, something like this, but it takes a lot longer. So it's not even forcing you. Take the knight. The point of taking the knight, by the way, is notice this bishop is still protecting the mates for now. So you have to keep check. If check, 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 notice the queen blocking the king, check, and checkmate eventually. Okay, so we get there in the end. But the game continuation is much simpler because variance only ran here, and so it was a simple mate. Okay, well done, Apostat Let's. You got there in the end, but you're running about 3 minutes delay. Okay. Okay, so that was the fourth highlight I wanted to show you. Really, the point of the stream are the three big matches, but there's still three more highlights before we get to those. And this is a game, Kataska's white and Zixon is black, and I'm not interested in the game so much as in one position in the game, but I'm going to show you the whole game until we get to that position, just so you get a flavor of it. This takes, attacks the queen, throws in a check, takes, so he gives up the queen, takes here, and black's king is looking a bit scary. Takes the rook, throws in a check, castles, queen takes. So putting pressure on this pinned piece. Bishop takes knight makes sense. Knight to t5 to defend this knight. Bishop here check, drops back, rook takes knight, and this is the critical position. In this critical position, all the games were 3+2 in answer to Apostat Let's question. Yes. So this is a critical position. Black is in a bit of trouble here. So why is he in trouble? If you just go like king takes rook, the problem is bishop takes knight, and if pawn takes bishop, this rook is coming in, and why can't we just defend? Because knight at f5 apparently is an issue. Why can't we just take it? Because bishop takes. I see we don't have really very good blockers. Anyway, so I'm kind of going way too deep, but knight g6 picks up the queen. Anyway, the black king, the point of all of this is just to say the black king is rather unsafe. But it turns out that Zixon, with a knight and queen in hand, has a mate in 19 in this position. So that's the purpose. This is the position I really want to show you. And here goes the mate. You just go for it. You just sack that queen. And you can't run. So running is a bad idea, because here stops the king running. So you basically have to take it. And that's not it. That's not it. That's what I meant. That's checkmate. So you can't run. You have to. Oops. You have to take this queen. Okay, beautiful. Knight here. The reason we put a new knight here is, of course, it's defended by the bishop. Yeah, I get shorter delay on mobile as well. It's very weird. So notice how this knight is keeping the king in a box. It can't run away this way. And it can't step back, otherwise queen here is checkmate. So it steps up. Now here goes. Queen here check. King takes knight. f5. And there are two choices here. We can either run back, king f3, bishop here check, and notice now this pawn is falling. So it runs away, so when it falls you've got a blocker. Pawn here check, king here, pawn here check, king here, and queen here check. Now here, we could just block here, but with a knight. But it makes no difference whether we give 1 knight or 3 knights. So it turns out if we want to delay the mate, we just give 3 knights. So why do we not want to take? Because if we take with the rook, then takes back, and we've still got the same issue, basically. We'll still have a queen on the back rank, and we'd have a rook in hand as well. So here, even though this looks silly, all we have is knights, and we only need 1 knight, as you'll see in the mate. So whether you just block here straight away with a single knight, you still give us the knight we need. So this is just delaying the mate. So we get the knight we need, takes. Okay, now what do we do? This is actually really tricky. So intermezzo move. And the reason we're doing that is so that we can now take here and take the rook with check. So that's a pretty hard one to see. Takes here, takes the rook with check. Rook here defended by the bishop. Bishop here, and knight here, checkmate. We only needed 1 of those knights, so the fact he gave us 3 knights makes no difference. So going all the way back, that was queen takes h2, knight here, check, f5, and king f3. Now there's another option. White could in fact take like so. But that's also, it turns out, mate for black because of the line goes as follows. Takes, rook here check, pawn here check, bishop here check, bishop takes pawn. The king does run away temporarily. If you try, this doesn't really help much because we just take and take again, and that's also mating soon. So takes this way, sack the queen, rook here check, pawn here check, king's in a box, bishop here check, and pawn here checkmate. So okay, completely nuts, but it's just about mate. So that's if the king going all the way back here. If the king runs back to g4, that's what happens. And that leads to mate. But okay, the other option was actually the king could also run to e5. But then that's also mate because of you win a knight with check, you take here, check, bishop here, queen here, pawn here, and that's also checkmate. Okay, so okay, it's very easy to miss this mate. So no shade on Zixon here, but it's kind of nice that he had this crazy mate in 19. Okay, last 2 highlights I want to show you before we get on to business. And the first is a win of Watin Allende, who was Opperweisen accidentally playing on his alt account as white against 264 Brock. Let me think, why do I want to show you this? I want to show you this because 264 Brock actually had mate here. So I'm just going to play through this just to show you the mate that black has. So 264 Brock as black has a very nice mate, which he'll be quite annoyed he missed. So check, takes the knight, sidesteps. So black is doing very well here, it turns out, because he's safe. And black has mate here. Check, check. And in this position, black has mate. So can anyone in the chat see it? And just to show you what happened in the game, so it's queen b1 was played in the game, blocks, queen here check, king kind of got away somehow, and somehow white ended up winning this. Whoa. So going all the way back to the position, check, knight takes, what's the mate? Can anyone see it? Apostatlet has got it. Queen takes, because it's white, it's queen takes a3, checkmate, yes. Simple mate in 1, but you can kind of see it's, yeah. So if, and this is mate either, if king takes, this is also mate apparently, because of you win the queen with check, and the idea is whatever you do, you've got queen takes pawn check coming, and let me see. Queen takes pawn check is not the most efficient apparently. So more efficient is knight at c5 check, king b4, and that checkmate. We don't even need the queen. Okay, so what if he blocks here? Still knight at c5, king b4, and at a5. Checkmate. Okay, so that's the way to finish it. But okay, what happened in the game was knight takes pawn, and he had to find, with unfortunately only 6 seconds on the clock, which explains the error. He had to find queen takes a3 checkmate. And the king can't run. Okay, so that was interesting. And then the last highlight I want to show you is maybe the only draw in the candidates so far. And 264 Brock, Cabbage was white, Oppa is black, and Oppa's going for a kind of Sicilian setup, which is very strange. And this is looking very dangerous. So white's doing pretty well here with this open diagonal. This bishop is really good. But Oppa's playing this very creatively, because he does this move. And he does that because he's eyeing this weak square here. So first of all, he wants to take the bishop. And notice, this is really crazy. This square is defended by the knight. This square, you kind of take it and then go knight here, checkmate. This square, similarly. This square is defended. So this is really curious, this move here. This bishop is kind of trapped. It has one place to go. And then Oppa goes, can you take my queen, please? Because this would be mate. So Cabbage goes, I'll take your queen, but I'll take it with a different piece, please. I'll take it with my rook, thank you very much. But a rook is a useful piece for black for his attack, because notice in this position, white can't go rook here because of rook here. Checkmate. Takes. So that's kind of annoying, this move. So throws in a check. Notice we don't want to waste our rook, because a rook we need for our mate. And our knight is also a really good attacking piece. Maybe we could move this knight back. But Oppa plays the best move, which is king d8. And this computer says, unsure who's winning. So that shows you. Really interesting position. Okay, d4. And the idea here is if you do this, at least I have some left for my king. Oppa takes it, takes back. Promotes to rook, which is entertaining. Takes back, drops the rook on the back rank, and he's got to be careful here. So rook takes f2, so he sacks the rook. He moves the knight on f6 here. Notice these two knights are forming a wall, so the king is in a box, and it can't step back here because that would be checkmate. So it has to step back to here or to here. And actually, even this leads to checkmate, because at f2, king d2, at e3, king e2, and then the final finish is rook here, check. The king is in a box, so you'd have to take. King takes. Remember, the king is in a box, so these three squares are all covered. And finally, queen at f1 is mate. So white had to tread very carefully here, has to go to e2. I cannot play a game, sorry, DJ Rocks. We're doing analysis. Highlights. So here, check. Remember, he's still in a box. Steps back, check, check. And black's got no better than a draw here. So Oppa took the draw. So yeah, really nice. A draw in the candidates. Okay, so that summarizes the highlights so far in the candidates. And what we're going to do now is we're going to have a look, if we have time, on three matches which never got live commentary. The first of them was mariorton against 264 Brock. The second will be Kleerkast against TheFinnisher. And the third will be Blitz Bullet against Dog Answer. And I've analysed all these games in some detail. So there wasn't a live stream, but we got we're going to have some really nice analysis. Okay. So I'm going to follow this one from mariorton's perspective. The person I'm following, I'm looking from whose perspective I'm looking is not the person I'm supporting, or not even sometimes, yeah, not necessarily the better player, nor the person I'm supporting. It's just it's fairly random. And if DJ Rocks is listening to the stream, this is an analysis stream. So we're not playing any games, and we can't play any games. We're just analyzing, and we're looking at highlights. Okay, so mariorton seems to be rather famous because he has this setup as white, which you'll see even in this game one. He harasses the bishop for sure, of sticking his king in the corner, putting a knight on b1, and now this is like, you can't call it the mariorton setup because I think people were saying in the Lichess chat how there are players back in the 90s on Fix who played with this setup. I think people mentioned Dovijanic, I'm not sure, from Serbia. But the thing about this setup is it's very hard to break down because h3 is double defended, there are no weaknesses. It's a little bit passive, but it's very hard to break down. So if you're up against a tough player and they're berserking you, then maybe this is a good setup. So this is interesting. Now, actually, I want to show you something already, because I didn't know this before I was analysing this. Suppose I go king h2 in this position. That's actually not a good move. And the reason is because takes, rook takes, and pawn at g4. And the idea is we've got a lot of pressure on h3, but you don't really want to take this pawn. I mean, maybe taking the pawn's even the best move, but takes, and this rook is kind of just feels very uncomfortable. Even knight takes rook, and black is better because there's so many holes in black's position. But if you don't take it, like, why can't you do something like knight g1? It doesn't work because of takes. Why not knight takes? Is there okay? The problem is the knight's still coming to g4. Is one idea, but also you could have bishop takes knight, bishop takes, and new knight on g4. Anyway, the point is black is getting exactly what he wants, which is a whole lot of play around white's king. You know, lots of holes being created, lots of trades, lots of activity, and look at black's king, all safe and secure. So you wouldn't normally realize this. In this position, you'd think king h2 is fine, but you've got to watch out because of bishop takes f2 and at g4. And the idea is you're both threatening, but also if you take, you've got this, you're creating all of these holes in the white position. But mariorton's very experienced. He doesn't go h2, he goes king h1, and this is why, because then this doesn't come with check, is the point. So I'm just to show you the line. If you try to do this now at g4, just takes, and rook steps back. Not too much. Now knight here would make sense. You want to trade knights to stick a knight on f2, makes sense. But now white would put a bishop on g1, and because he wasn't in check, he has time to do things like this. Takes, and this is, I mean, the beautiful move in this position. So actually, this is still playable for black because of this crazy move, knight at h4. But this is just pure computer stuff. And the idea of that is you have to take it, but then this comes, and it just looks a little bit uncomfortable. Attacking the queen, he even might sack the queen. Well, actually, yeah. So this is all very uncomfortable, but probably white is fine as long as he keeps his king safe. So black doesn't have that much material. What black's just sacked the house on him. Got to be careful. In this position, don't take this pawn because this is checkmate already. This is a very crazy mate. But as long as you step back, and I mean, the engine will say black is better in this position, but I don't believe it for 1 second. I think as long as white gets back to safety, black's just got far too much material, and black will be fine. White will be fine. But this is all like knight at h4 is just, the idea is just to bring the queen in, and the idea is you're always harassing him, and you always have like a counter threat. Like you're defending with the counter attack is the idea of this. Obviously, you don't do this because that will be made immediately. So you do have to take. So he keeps on attack, counter attack, and yeah, it's very interesting. But I think white would be better for a strong player. So king h1 is a really good move. Anyway, what happens in the game is lots of pressure is put on h3, and we defend with a knight on g1. This is a classic setup, and you know how openings go in and out of fashion, and this seems to be a fashion in Crazyhouse lately because it's really annoying and hard to break down. Knight h5. Oh, and just to say here again, if I saw this position, just what do you play as white in this position? This would be fairly natural, but again, you just got to watch out for this takes, pawn at g4, and this is actually quite nice for black. I mean, it's not winning, but it's pretty good for black. So knight g1 is good. He takes the bishop. I think this is, if mariorton made a mistake in this game, it's wasting time with moves like a3. The reason he plays a3 is because this pawn is double attacked, and he doesn't want to lose a pawn. But the reality, if you take this pawn, say rook takes pawn, rook takes, bishop takes, you've just taken one of your pieces out of the attack against the king. So you'd win a pawn, but you lose too much time. So I would say, okay, you're hanging a pawn, but it's just not really necessary. So what should white do in this kind of position? I'd say e4 is good, it's developing fast, or bishop f3 is good. Make your king even more secure with counter-attacking ideas. So those are probably better moves. So very tiny inaccuracy from mariorton. Knight g5 came, a lot of pressure here, and he doesn't know how to defend, so he pushes h4, and we'll see this opening repeated in future games. Knight h3, takes. You don't really want to take this. I mean, that's sort of like underestimate of, like, if takes, queen takes, this must be absolutely crushing for black. Apparently this is forced mate in 13, so if king here, then it's obvious why it's completely crushing, because you just have this. So obviously you have to block. But even if you block, there's, I mean, so I was thinking bishop at g2, but apparently the move here is knight takes g3 to get a pawn for g2 is the point. So that's much more dangerous. And I'm not going to go into I mean, it's already clear this is lethal. Maybe I should go into it, because I'm not sure how. Okay, apparently knight at g4 is the move, so you can't take it, or queen here is checkmate. And there's no defense. Oh, there is a defense. The defense is bishop here check to win that knight, and if you take it, bishop here check. Okay, so now this isn't a mate threat anymore, so we can take it. Okay, so this is just all crazy stuff. I shouldn't have gone into this. And the point is just very chill, just threatening bishop here checkmate, and white's got no pieces in hand, so it can't defend. Nothing he can do. But okay, that was just, I wasn't expecting to go. It's fairly obvious taking that bishop is a bad idea. You're putting your queen right next to your king. But this, white stays safe, and still not clear who's winning. Takes. So you can see black can get a draw if he wants to by repeating. But black wants better than a draw, which is understandable. So he tries with the knight. And here, what's the idea? The idea is to take on here, and then take on here. So tries to defend with the knight. Attacks the knight. Well, now you've got to be careful. The attack on the knight is really an attack on f2, f2, g3. So really white should have done something like this, probably. Instead he defends the knight, but it's not the knight that needs defending. It's f2, g3 that needs defending. So again, a slight inaccuracy, because now this comes. And black is doing very well indeed. At e6. I mean, there are even ideas of queen takes bishop in this position, which are also decent. But nothing completely clear. So it's just an idea. Black is doing very well, turns out. But okay, black played a bit more defensively. Bishop at g1, trying to defend that king. Knight at g6, h5, knight h4. It just seems very hard. And here black really made a mistake, because he went knight takes pawn, and he wants a pawn on g3. It does make sense. But logically, take the bishop first, which is defending this pawn, then go knight takes pawn, and you get all the same things, just stronger. And the idea is simply just go queen here, queen takes bishop, and deliver some kind of mate very soon. Instead, what happened in the games, he went straight for this knight h4. Okay, you get a rook back, but it's not nearly as bad. So white starts fighting back a bit, because black has no material. Okay, so the knight's under attack, so goes back. And, well, it's a tough game. It's hitting the rook, but you don't really want to take the rook, because this would open up this file. So that's why takes, queen takes, defends g2. It's a very defensive move from mariorton, trying to keep his king safe. Actually, in this position, the correct approach, it turns out, is taking here, saying, well, actually g2 is okay, I'm all defended here. And taking here, the idea being if you take here, take here. So actually the white king is all actually quite nicely defended. And you're now going for a queen trade. And the black king's stuck in the center of the board and doesn't really want a queen trade. It's not clear who's better here. It's sort of fairly even. But so you'll get, it's 2 pawns for the piece, which is fair, but it's creating a lot of weaknesses in black's camp. But hang on a second, why not bishop takes knight, rook takes? So maybe that would be a bit better, but then bishop takes, pawn takes, knight here would be the idea. So, okay, really tough position, but he goes at g2, and black's, who was doing very well earlier, sort of gets back in control a little bit. Takes, throws in a check, knight takes e5 check, takes, f takes g2 check, takes. So 264 block as black is doing very nicely. Queen here check. And here the thing to do, apparently, as a rule in Crazyhouse, if you're checked, block the check, because if you do a move like this, you're giving away all of these squares. But it turns out that's not a problem, because white doesn't have a bishop. If he had a bishop, it would be a problem. But because he doesn't have a bishop, it's actually the best thing to do is to just run in this position. Keep your pieces in hand for the attack. But that's an unusual position for that. Instead, he blocked, which is a very tiny mistake. And this was a bluff, basically, just dropping this pawn here. You just take the pawn. It doesn't matter that this square is not defended. Maybe you have this, but you can just take this as well. Takes, 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 everything. This square doesn't need to be defended. So instead he took here, keeping an eye on this square here. Here, bishop at c8. Oh, so actually in this position, I'm going way too deep, but a better move for white here is actually f5. So we're threatening this as well as this. So it's like a double attack. And I reckon this engine likes black, but I think this is actually a draw, because you go knight f8, takes, takes, repeat, knight here, takes, takes, repeat, drop back, takes, and then run, queen takes bishop, knight takes. So why are we doing that? Because the bishop is a very powerful piece for our attack. Knight here, check, takes, and we give away our rook. Why do we do that? Because we can drop a knight and get a very funny little draw here for white. So black might be better, but there's this really sneaky queen takes bishop, bishop here, knight here, and we get a draw. Very, very little, funny little line. Hi there, PKR. Queen takes f4, rook at f3. Let's go back to that. Queen at f4, rook at f3. Takes, yeah, a good point that would have been. So it turns out black is doing fine here, but I can see how giving up the queen is sort of scary. And then the move here is something like maybe bishop at d6 or something. But that's very hard to do because it's saying that queen takes e6 is not a threat. Queen takes e6, king takes. This looks very dangerous when white has a knight and a queen. So why is that not a problem? Oh, not that. Oh, there are no knight checks. Okay. Okay, but this is very hard to do. I mean, this is just very hard to do. Queen at e6. To see that you're actually safe here, it's very hard. King f8, knight d7, king here, and you just run to here. And you're actually okay. Yeah, that would be very hard to see you're actually okay here. It turns out you're okay. And then if you do moves like this, then suddenly you're losing a lot of your advantage, which is that's really hard because the temptation is to try and keep an eye on this square here, but then if you do that, you're not threatening anything. So it turns out go for the counterattack with the mate, and it turns out queen takes e6 is not working. There's no way you can see that though. Is the problem with 15 seconds on the clock. So black had a draw if they wanted it way earlier in the game. Yeah, I mean, it's just a... So it was way, 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 way back here. So here, they could just go takes, takes, drop another bishop here. You know, we could just go takes, takes, drop another bishop here, and this position will eventually repeat unless you don't defend with the bishop. But if you don't defend with the bishop, then you're not defending h3. Like if you defend with the rook, you're suddenly completely losing. And the way the engine wants to skin it is actually not, I'd say take the bishop, but the way the engine wants to skin it is to do this and pick up the queen. But the reason you'd be completely losing is just because if takes, rook takes, well, the queen h3 could even be coming. Bishop here, and moves like... Okay, so it's not completely clear, but I was thinking just simply bishop at h3 is also good. And you can see like the light squares are just too weak around the white king. So if white wants to hold the light squares, he has to defend with the bishop. But if you defend with the bishop, you can just go takes, takes, and repeat. So black can always get this silly little draw. And then the draw that white had is with this funny light move f5 and sack your queen and sack your knight and sack your rook, and then with your second knight there's actually no way out. So it's just hilarious little draw here. You just sack all your pieces. But okay, instead at d5 came, and the correct move is knight at f8. Takes and don't take back, just run. And he doesn't have anything, the king is safe. You could take a bishop for g8, but takes, the knight defends that key square. So the king is actually very safe on h7. So white has nothing and black would be winning. But instead he goes for bishop at c8, which is still good, but a bit more tricky. Takes, 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 takes. f5 comes. So you see white's really got some good ideas here, because he's hitting these two. This is like, how do you attack a king? One really fundamental way of attacking the king is you attack the two squares diagonal to the king with a pawn. That's why you should always have at least one pawn in hand if you want to attack your opponent. So takes at d5 is a strong move. It's a strong move because it's defended by the bishop. And black's been doing well all this game. This is game one. And he makes a mistake here because he goes for a counterattack. That's a really bad move because takes, and he realizes he can't take back is the problem. Because if you take back, there's queen here check, and queen takes pawn checkmate. So he runs back, but actually there's no answer because there's bishop here check. If you run to here, queen here's checkmate. He ran to here, and knight here's checkmate. So suddenly he's lost from doing really well all game. This just one more attacking move, and he didn't have time to attack. He had to defend. Now Actually, in this position, the computer's really unclear who's winning, because computer thinks black's winning, and the line it suggests is queen h3. Takes here and defend. And go knight here, threatening knight takes bishop. Check is what it recommends. And white's defenses go queen f3 or queen f4. So queen f3, for example, and then just run the king back. But it's really unclear who's winning this. So just what is going on here? What's going on is that white has two queens and a knight in hand, whereas black has an extra minor piece, a load of pawns, like 6 pawns in hand. So if black can get those pawns on the board, then white's in big trouble. So it's unclear. So if I just play through like engine best line, it would be something like takes, check, bishop here, check, takes, blocks. The knight's defending, so you can't take on g6. And it would be something like this. So white might so engine thought black was winning, but then it kind of goes deep in the line, and it suddenly finds, well, maybe white's actually better. Why are we doing weird moves like g2? Why don't we just go like f3 and prepare g2? Is actually because this is mating already with all these minor pieces. But okay, I did some kind of really like pages and pages of analysis on this, but at the end of the day, I don't know who's winning in this final position. If 264 Brock had played this move here, I really don't. I mean, engine likes black, but I just really don't know. I need someone with a super engine to analyze and find out who's really better. So Zixon, just with human brain, said white goes queen here, black goes queen here, takes, queen takes, and bishop at e4, trying to put more pressure on here, and it seems like an equal position. So white's got that extra queen, but black's got so many pawns in hand that could completely crush the opponent. So okay, crazy. Really, that's game 1. Okay, let's go on to game 2. So this time, as I said, I'm going to look from mariorton's perspective for this series. Mariorton's just taken a 1-0 lead, and what's he going to do as black? You'll see what he's going to do as black. He's going to do the same kind of stuff as he did as white, which is, this is by the way quite classic, to defend, to push h3 because it defends the h3 squared, and to defend that square with the king. So you've got king and bishop defending the square. And sometimes you've got weird ideas of even sacking the queen on h3. But instead, mariorton has a move which I saw TheFinnisher do in one of the Kleerkast games, which is to go queen f5, and that is to stick the queen on h5 and to start some kind of attack. It's like a slightly slow approach, but very kind of direct. I'm just going to stick my queen on to f5 to h5, and just going to attack your king like crazy. And it kind of works. Maybe one idea for white is to try and do a move like this to block the queen getting to h5. So it's very unclear who's winning. But okay, he goes for d5, right here. And here, I guess, slightly dubious move from 264 Brock, going knight g5. The reason it's not so great is black wants to go h6 anyway. So he goes h6. And when attacked and you don't have a good defense, if you just went back, it's a real concession. So he does e4 first, trying to, at least the queen can't go to h5 now. But this turns out not to be good, just because the black queen has a queen sack. Takes, and it's an exchange for queen for 2 pieces is a fair exchange, and the black king is very, very safe. This is defended, this is defended, this is defended. Even this is defended. So, I mean, even this is defended. So you see how this black has got really good control. Okay, so maybe these squares are contested. These squares are contested, but Black's got really good control of the position. Okay, knight b5 came. He pushes g4. Excellent move. Takes, takes. Gets in on h3. You can see doing really nicely here. Bishop at g4 check. King h2. And now in this position, you could be super safe and just take twice here. Takes, takes, takes. But actually there's a much better move for black here, which mariorton missed, which is simply to take that knight and to allow this check to happen. Hi there, I am CJebs. And the reason it's a stronger move is because takes. The problem is this square is defended anyway. I mean, if bishop here, we can actually ignore it because the f7 square is defended and go straight for this counterattack. And f6 is weak, f3 is weak rather. So this is a real problem. So bishop takes knight is powerful because it's actually a double attack on e2, and that threat is bigger than f7 falling. So maybe f3, but then we can just take on e2 anyway, and then knight takes. And the point of this knight takes is if you just step back, it's a very simple mate. Very classic mate with the knight and pawns. Pawn here, and we have one pawn left. Wonderful. So you'd have to give up the queen, but if you give up the queen, then you try and defend the mate, no good, because the knight is defended. So, I mean, actually it just doesn't work. Yeah, he doesn't need to be defended. Takes and queen here is checkmate. And if you don't take it, then queen h2 is checkmate. So there's really no defense in this position. So bishop takes knight was very strong. But instead, mariorton goes for a more defensive option. This takes e6, takes here, knight here, check. But in any case, this is just classic stuff from black, hitting the weak squares, and it's completely crushing. Takes, takes. In fact, in this position, black already has forced mate, which he finds. Here, check. Takes here. Very nice move. f3 no longer defended after the queen took. But king takes is no better. King takes is no better because we could either put a rook on the back rank and that would be mating, or you could go knight takes pawn and that would be mating. So there are lots of ideas here. Rook on the back rank is a fairly obvious approach. So I'll just show rook at h1, blocks, knight takes h2, steps aside, here, king takes, knight here check, here, bishop takes pawn check here, and knight here checkmate would be a very standard approach. But the engine really wants to do a very cunning move here, which is put a knight on d2 to block the king from even running this way. So that's a very deep move. Knight d2 check. The point is, if you take the knight, now the king is actually trapped. So rook here check. Knight takes pawn is mating. Rook takes knight. Rook takes bishop. And if you just ignore this move, like if you go king here, then just rook here, knight takes pawn is mate. If you go king here, then apparently there's rook at f1. And we're going to win the queen potentially. Knight c4. Okay, so this again, win the queen with check, and queen here is mate. So, okay, there's no need to be so fancy, but okay, so queen takes was necessary, but then there's this. Knight takes, well, you win another pawn, and you have to take it, and then let's just turn the engine off here. Queen here check, knight here check, rook here checkmate. So yeah, very strong game from mariorton, and he took a 2-love lead in this match. Yeah, nice d2 check, very nifty idea. Like not an idea you'll see actually in practical games, because everything, if there's another idea that wins, you wouldn't necessarily risk it, but very beautiful to see it. So what are we going to see in game 3? A repeat of the opening that worked so well in game 1. Sticking that knight on g1, and rather weird. But a good response from black. I mean, he has some nice ideas. Okay, so he's hitting g3. He's got a pawn on h3, so some nice ideas. So knight takes g3 is the deviation from game one, because in game one, I think the knight came here. So knight takes g3 is a bit of a deviation. Knight h5 maybe is a slight error because you're allowing this to happen. And actually the apparently a move here for black is, I'm not saying it's a better move, but it's an interesting move. It's just castle, and then do this, and then try and hunt for that knight to stick on g4. It's just an interesting idea. So you're just hunting for that knight. But actually you can't just go and take this. It's very curious. This pawn here, you can't just go and take that knight because that pawn is going to start causing trouble. You can take the bishop and suddenly it's actually the black king which finds itself in danger. But okay, that's going way too deep. So you can't just take the knight, but you can just move this rook aside, and I think black should be doing quite nicely here. Check, check. Anyway, really, yeah. Anyway, this is just an interesting idea. I'm not going to go just castles queenside is interesting, but okay, he goes for bishop at g2. Let's get back to the game. Rook f2, rook h7, trying to defend g7 this way. Bishop at g8, looking at f7 as well, so it's queen g4. So we're eyeing that knight. Bishop takes knight, and queen takes knight. It's a really nice move, queen takes knight, because we're threatening knight at g4, checkmate. So, so at g4 was played. Actually, the best move here from white is actually just taking this bishop. He's actually fine. But at g4 instead was played. Takes the bishop. Notice how black's trying to open up the h file. So it's a really interesting game, this. But actually it turns out bishop takes g4 was better. Actually giving up the queen. This is surprising, because your opponent has a pawn, a knight, a queen in hand, but the bishop on g4, this is a key point, the bishop on g4 actually protects you. So there's no threat here, because the bishop on g4 is actually protecting this king, and there are no knight checks. But that's hard to see. So to do bishop takes g4, realize that actually this bishop is going to be protecting my king. That's pretty hard to see. So instead of bishop takes g4, he took the bishop, he allows this, takes, and now this rook can't be taken. If the rook were taken, then pawn at g6 and it's mate. If king takes pawn, queen here check, and queen takes pawn is checkmate. If the king steps back, there's going to be a standard mate. Queen here check, king here, knight here check, king here, and queen takes pawn, checkmate. And if the king steps up, then queen here is checkmate straight away. So this is actually the game. He castles. He can't take the rook. He just castles out the way. But black is in a bit of trouble here because there's no immediate mate. He doesn't have like a rook for h1 or something. Queen here check. At a6. Another interesting move here is at a7, but for a very deep reason. Takes. Take the bishop. And you're taking the bishop because you just want to stick a bishop here and put knight here, smothered mate. So there's no time to take back. You might defend. But there's bishop at f5. And you're basically taking back control of this diagonal. Tough idea. So the reason why you don't do something like knight at c6 is because bishop here check, pawn here, And okay, you've defended against a smothered mate, but there's still rook takes pawn, and takes, and I think black's going to be in trouble here. Yeah, and says plus 20. So no, not necessarily a forced mate, but it's trouble. So this is interesting just to distract the knight, and so then there's some other threat ideas on the king. But okay, instead at a6, which is also very strong, takes, and white just wishes he had a pawn. Well, there's a diagonal for mate. The problem is black gets to play first. Bishop here, check is good, pawn here, and white's still doing very well, but he needs to find this move. So if takes here, check, check, and checkmate. With the bishop keeps the king from going to the third rank, and this is a classic position with two knights, three apart, cover all of these squares. Yeah, it's a double check, so you have to move. Yeah, and I don't think this helps much either, because then you have bishop here, check, and then what's the continuation? Oh, very nice. This one. Okay, so that's why rook takes d7 was the move here. Instead, white slightly loses his way, gives up the queen, and only then finds rook takes d7. It's not quite as strong. But here black had to find the move. Oh, that's what he had to find the move, takes bishop. Okay, so it's very counterintuitive. It's so often we see in Crazyhouse games how king b8 is so strong, the king is safe. But it's counterintuitive. In this position, this is actually safer. Because it looks like you're getting mated, but nope. You're actually safe. So you give up the piece, but you have a blocker on f8, on c8, takes, and now we have a counterattack. Check, check, and this will be checkmating. King here. So where's the mate here? Because the bishop is defended. Ah, okay, that's where the mate is. There's no king takes bishop because it's defended. So rook takes h4 is mating. So you'd have to block here, but then this is also. Oh right, okay. So it looks really threatening. You're going to have like discovered checks, but this is a beautiful defense. Just put a queen on the back rank. We clear our back rank, and we still got a huge attack going on the white king. Bishop takes bishop, so we're threatening rook at g2 and discoveries. And there's no defense actually for white. So king takes d7 was the very counterintuitive move. Instead, king b8 was played, and takes happened. Pawn here, and takes, and it's painful. King b7, bishop at g2 was played, knight here, double check, king b8, and here, actually, mariorton had mate in 1 with knight at d7, but instead he went for a slower mate, check, check, and checkmate. So a topsy-turvy game, very difficult move to find from Cabbage. Had to find, in this position, he had to find king takes bishop to stay in the game. And if he does find that, then it's unclear who's winning. But maybe black is even winning this. Because you're attacking him, but you don't actually have anything. So takes, rook takes, yeah, it's just, you'd have to defend with, you have to find this, yeah, and black is probably winning this even. So yeah. So double check, could have mated, but goes for this two knights and bishop mate. Okay, so at this point, 264 Brock is love 3 down, so he's having a hard time against mariorton. And we now go into game 4. And I think Cabbage switches it up a bit. He says, okay, we need to change things up. Go for h4. And this is not entirely, maybe not all entirely wise, but he's feeling like I have to disturb this black king before he gets so safe. Got to try and attack him. Can't just have him always so safe. Takes the pawn and h5, check, sidesteps. Okay, but mariorton just plays a masterclass here. He just realizes your king isn't safe, my king actually still is safe. I'm going to go for a queen trade. If you take, I take back with check. That's not very nice. Well, I'm still taking with check. This goes in. mariorton. The answer to this hyper-aggression against black is mariorton just goes for it. Takes. I'll take the rook and threaten mate in one here. You can take me with check. I've got to be careful here. Yeah, you've got to be careful. You can't sidestep. If you sidestep, that's the way to get mated, because there's no back rank. Even if there were a rook here, this is actually still mate, so it's a classic thing. Pawn here, you just recycle any rooks. It would be rook takes rook, pawn takes, king takes, and your last another pawn comes here and you have a back rank mate. So you've got to be careful here. You do need to take this. Defends. Queen here, going for the mate. Defends. Queen here, going for rook g1 mate. Knight f3, good move, good move. I wouldn't know what to do in this position. Deflect the knight. That's a nice move. So king e1. He takes the knight. Queen gets in, and really he missed just an easy move here. Queen takes here, and rook here, checkmate. Instead, a much longer mate happened, but he gets there in the end. So with that, mariorton took a 4-love lead. These are not best of 10. These are 10 game, as you can see from the table. It's 10 games exactly, and it can be a draw, like 5-5. There doesn't have to be a winner. And every game counts. So it's not match points that count, it's game points that count. Match points are interesting, but it's only game points that matter. So you could, in theory, you could lose most of your matches 4.5, 5.5, but if you beat everyone else 10-0, you can win. Okay, so 264 Brock has now love 4 down, and he has the black pieces, and he has to fight against this opening again. Ooh. So we were talking about bishop takes here and pawn here, but we don't have that yet because the knight's not yet on f6. And now the knight's on f6. Sorry, now the knight's on f6. Is there this sort of idea? Let's just have a look. So if takes, just because I'm actually curious, takes, and at g4, it doesn't quite work because there's rook takes. How is that different from last time? I'm trying to remember. So if we just go back to game, I'm not sure myself. Let's just go back to game 1. And I was discussing why king h2 was a bit risky because of this. Oh yeah, okay. So here there's a knight in the way, so you can't just go rook takes f6. So going back to game 5. So notice he goes king h2, knight g1, and this is fine. There's a knight and a bishop and a king all defending h3, and the bishop takes f2 doesn't work because if you do this, you just take this knight. And then in this position, we could take the pawn, or we could even just do this. I don't know what I don't see why you wouldn't take the pawn and replace it on h3. That feels like the obvious thing to do, but for some reason the engine at low depths likes h4, and I don't understand why that is. So actually for this game, if you notice, black Cabbage here keeps on playing with this setup. So actually I just went on a little bit of a distraction here. Said if I were playing against this setup, I would definitely play d5 and not d6. You know what he's playing, and you just occupy the center and pretend you're white. And I even show here a game I played. I think I was white against an engine in this kind of position, and it followed this line, in fact. So h3, bishop takes. So sacking on h3 and then getting the piece back. But in doing so, creating a tiny weakness on h3, maybe for the future. e4. Now, even among human players, it says no games found. That's surprising. Oh yes, there are no games found at the high level, and among games there are on Lichess, black actually has a 5-0 win rate in this position. So the problem with this is white doesn't really want to open up the d file because these two squares are both weak. So the white king is not so safe here. So you don't really want to take. So you maybe plug the weakness. Yeah, so if you did take, I just showed the line. This is actually a game I played against the bot. So this shows how bad it is to take. Takes. This is from back in a long time ago. Anyway, 2 years ago or so. Takes. I didn't want to take with the king because knight here was coming in and that looked like I was getting mated. So I go here. He still just does this. Rook comes in. Oof, f2 is weak. Takes here, rook here, check. Knight here, check. Rook takes, pawn checkmate. So that's how the bot beat me in a game when I opened up that d file. So basically you don't want to open up the d file in this position. So what you should do instead is block up the weakness. But I'm saying this is still probably decent for black. So attack f3, develop, takes. And what black wants to do is put a knight on e5, hitting that queen, but the problem is rook e1 would be annoying. So castles first, planning knight at e5. White himself would put a bishop on e5 to stop it. And this is a very nice little move just to challenge. You're looking at f2, but you're just challenging e5. Takes, and suddenly black controls e5. So that's how black should play. This is the point of what I'm trying to say here. This is how I think black should play against this very safe setup. Ooh, so this position here is like white has no defense really of like h3 here. There's no real good defense. You could try knight at g5, I guess, but the problem is takes, even just takes, and then here is a slight issue, and black's doing very well. Why is he doing well? Because takes is going pretty deep. Queen takes, bishop at g4. Why can't we just step back and defend the knight? Oh, I see. Bishop takes c2 comes. Why can't we just take back? I'm just going way too deep. But knight e2, king h1, at f3, queen here, takes, queen takes, pawn here. Okay, so it's like somehow white is keeping the material equality, but the problem is the light squares around this king are just being slowly picked away at, and he'll lose. So because white can't defend, he might go for a counterattack. Takes, counterattack. This doesn't really work, but it's a try. The idea of this move is you want to pick up a pawn and deliver checkmate with the pawn here. So you defend the mate, hit the knight. Okay, so this is just an idea. Takes, pawn here, takes, knight here, check. Okay, so this is just like some sort of engine line of what could happen in this kind of variation. Yeah. So the point of this is if king takes bishop, queen here check, and knight here is checkmate. Is it? Yeah, because this square is defended. And if you take the knight, then takes here, and knight here, takes here is eventually going to be mate. And if you take this one, then knight here to stop the king running back, and queen g2 was probably mate. So here, queen here is mate, and if you go here, then queen here is mate. Okay, so all of that is just basically to say that if I were black against this setup, I would just play with the 2 pawns, open up a slight weakness on h3 and push e5, and even just attack f3 and castle, and look to try and control this e5 square, and this is yeah, I'd say this is a good approach. And then just try and hit the light squares. And you notice black king is fairly safe, and yeah, this would be an approach. Maybe black is slightly better here, but okay. Cabbage continued with d6 castles. We have the whole system: knight g1, e3, knight f6 here, knight takes e4, knight to f6 again, bishop takes, pawn takes, knight e7. Probably good here is just c4 to defend your center, but instead queen d3 came. So maybe a slight error from mariorton, and suddenly he's finding 3 attackers on this central pawn, as well as his queen hanging. It's a bit uncomfortable. So he should have just gone c4 here, and he's probably doing, yeah, maybe it's quite equal. But okay, queen d3. So when there's no defense, counterattack. So that's what he does. Bishop at b5. Defends, takes, trying to distract. Obviously you can't take with the queen because bishop takes queen is kind of awkward. So that's why he takes with the knight. And then backs off. But black's doing pretty nicely here. f3, hitting f3, brings his knight hitting f3. All his pieces, lots of pieces targeting f3. And this is, I'd say, is the blunder, because you're taking away a defender from f3. So f3 comes at f3, backs off, takes, and he just keeps on plugging away at f3. It's a very simple approach. And in this position, white resigned, because if you take it here, this pawn here, check coming. You're just grabbing another pawn because you want checkmate. And if you take the knight, that pawn here comes anyway. Knight here comes. If you step up, queen takes, pawn is mate. So takes, knight here check, queen takes, pawn is mate. So a very nice game from Cabbage as black. So how did he do it? He put pressure on the center, and maybe just that one mistake. Put pressure on the center and put pressure on f3. So yeah, just kept in this position. You just keep plugging away on f3. The light square. You've got an entry point. So Cabbage begins to fight back. So going into the second half of the match, game 6, and total change in system from Cabbage, going for this fianchetto, and going for h. It's a very weird system, you know, g3 and h4. Could call it hyper aggressive. So d6 was played. So actually in this position, yeah, bishop d2 is not so strong, because that could just go knight e4. And if you attack the knight, the natural thing to do, just sack on f2. And white's not ready for a fight. Black's all castled, ready to develop and everything. So you get 2 pawns for the piece. So he went d6, but I'm saying even better is just to go like this. Takes, and takes. And we're ready for a fight. We're ready for like check, pick up this bishop. You know, black's ready for a fight here because he's all developed. But okay, instead he does this and gives away the piece for a pawn. h5 came, and the idea of h5 is to push h6, so mariorton wisely blocks up h6. You could go this, but then takes, and this diagonal is weak, which is why he puts a new pawn on h6, which is, it's actually okay. It's okay because white's pretty underdeveloped. King f1, knight d4, takes. Okay, really nice move here from mariorton. Bishop at g3. And the idea is you just can't take that bishop, because takes, knight takes. This rook is cutting off the file. King f2, knight takes rook with check. The king comes, if the king goes back, rook here is mate. If king comes up, rook here is still practically mate. King would come here, and the pawns will probably finish him at this point. Maybe the king could sneak. back somehow. Maybe, yeah, it's going to be mate if you take this. Should we look at it just for fun? So it's here, king f2, knight here, king f3. I was doing rook at f2 and I just missed rook at g3, so it's just mate in one. Okay, so you don't take that bishop. So really nice move, bishop at g3 from mariorton. Knight e2, defending his knight. c6, bishop at g4. So develops his queen. Maybe he's hoping for queen takes bishop if you take. And probably a nice approach here is if takes at e6. It's interesting because if you take here, then here. So that would have been an interesting approach. So just going ahead, taking and dropping a pawn on e6, trying to get. So it's nothing huge, but it's just an interesting idea. Instead, bishop at d7 was played. So white's still doing very nicely. Queen e5, hitting the knight, double attack on the queen. Oh, it's not an attack because the bishop's not defended. Takes, but this is not good for black because takes here, bishop at e4, takes, bishop here, takes, queen comes back at e4. So I don't know what white missed. But okay, bishop at e6. So if black does apparently have a move here to stay in the game, which is bishop at f3. But looking at this position, yeah, white's been doing well the whole game, but he has an interesting move here with bishop at f3. And the idea is they're knight at h2 ideas sometimes. Yeah. So if you take knight h2, you don't want to go here. That's the one point, because otherwise there's a standard mating pattern with two knights and a pawn. But if you go to king to g2, the problem is knight h4, and that's also not very good. So all in all, actually taking the knight is probably your best bet. Takes, and trying to defend g2 square with also counter-attacking ideas. Check, and yeah, it's say this is an equal position. But what happened in the game was instead black did this, and 264 Brock chased that queen around. So he sacked the queen, he won the bishop, and you can see he's this is a threat on g2, so that's why this is nothing to do with the knight, it's actually defending g2. And takes, still stays quite safe. So white's doing very nicely here, and eventually finds a mate with knight takes h6 check. There's even a faster mate with rook h8, probably, because then this is checkmate. But okay, he played knight h6 check first, and this is also checkmating eventually. And in this position, black resigned, because wherever he goes, rook here is checkmate, and if king here, rook here, still checkmate. So Cabbage won again. And we're going to have another game as white. Slightly different approach, but this taking the knight on f3, h3. So the knight on f3 can't go to g1. Okay, this is interesting. So instead of stepping back with the bishop, he steps forward now. c3 does create a bit of a weakness here, as we'll see. It also stops the knight ever coming back to c3. So this knight is looking a little bit silly on a4. So bishop takes f2 check was interesting, and it was a very nice, just very visually nice move to put a piece on d3, because this really emphasizes how the white pieces are trapped. The bishop can't get out, the rook is stuck, and so The score now is 4-2 to mariorton. Yeah, at the start of this game. So knight d3, a nice bind on white's position, and because he can't push this d pawn, so he can't develop his queen side. Rook e2 was played. F4. So really good attacking moves from Cabbage here. Takes. Okay, so we lose the bind a little bit, but we get a good attack. Sacks the queen. Takes back. Blocks the e-file. White's still trying to stay safe. I said probably an interesting move in this position was knight at d4, and then castle. And the idea is we just drop a pawn here and try and do something on the back rank. A pawn here or a knight here are interesting ideas. And then just get something on the back rank. But we castle first to avoid any problems on this file. But why can't we just go straight away for at e2? At e2, oh, of course, knight at c7 is the issue. Yeah. So that's why we have to castle quickly first, and then we can do all our evil plans. Yeah, so that's why queen e1 doesn't really work. So, but queen d3 doesn't work because then we get a rook on the back rank, and white's pieces can never develop. This bishop is trapped and so on. It's just hard to get rid of this rook. This creates a bind on the white position. So that's why you would go back to e1 to defend, but then, yeah. Okay, so in this position, knight at e4 was very interesting. But okay, d4 is also good. f4, opening up the bishop. So it's a nice move, and the idea is that we take a knight and stick it on c7. So it's a strong move from mariorton. Castles, wise, get out of the way. Takes the bishop, takes back with the knight. Ooh, I'm looking at this square here. At h6, just goes straight in for the attack. Bishop takes h3. I remember watching this game, and I was hoping for bishop takes h3 in this position. We got a pawn, a knight, a rook in hand, and a potential Arabian mate if we can get a knight on f3, rook on h2. Just goes for it. Takes, defends, then takes back. And now, obviously, if white could put his bishop instead of f3 on f6, then he'd be winning, but he didn't have time because he had to use it to defend. So takes here and defends. Yeah, but actually, probably the strongest thing from black here is he doesn't need to defend because white doesn't have the material to mate. So knight takes bishop, strong. Queen takes. Get a rook on the back rank. And then just takes here and just... white doesn't have time to do moves like this, basically. He just gets mated. So I'll just, yeah, if this, then this, and you're getting mated. That's the problem. So you can't take with the queen, but if you don't take with the queen, you can't. If you take with the bishop, then you could just defend, I guess, and continue your attack in future. If this now, then maybe knight at g5. Okay, something like this. So if takes here, takes here. Takes. If takes here, then takes here is the idea. Queen takes, and maybe even bishop at c6. Oh, actually, that doesn't work. Yeah. So you just take anything in the way. This, you probably just take it. Okay. Also, you have rook e1 check actually in that position. Rook e1 check and takes here. So yeah, this is very uncomfortable for white. Okay, so takes. He did g7, but g7 was a bit premature. Knight takes bishop was actually a really nice move in this position. But okay, pawn here, check first, just for safety. Then takes the bishop. Yeah, then takes the bishop, then check here, winning the queen, and in this position, black won on time. So black's doing much better, and knight takes bishop is coming. There's no immediate threat. I mean, if you just did something like this, there's already a mate here with rook h2 and takes the bishop with check. Coming. king here. There's a standard mate here. If you take the bishop, queen here is mate, so you have to run. And then there's queen e1 mate. There's a slightly longer mate. Apparently king here survives just a little bit longer. And then you have to go queen here check, block, and pawn here checkmate. So yeah, so in this position, white just lost on time. So fight back, 4-3 now. So game 8, and again, it worked last time, so he continues with this setup, but instead of going h4, h5, which is a little bit dodgy to be honest, he instead goes for this. Oh, he does go h4, h5. Okay. And this time, instead of allowing h5 and blocking on h6, black went h5 himself, which is good. Now the threat is to sack on h5. Bishop at g7 came. And it would have been actually quite interesting to see what happens if you sack. Because in this position, the natural move to do as black is bishop at g6. It defends and attacks at the same time. But you could take it, throw in a check, and you haven't got a good blocker, no pawn to block with, and do this. And the idea is just to open up this. So why not just do this? The problem with this is, I think, yeah, apparently at h7 is the problem. Knight g6 takes rook, all sorts of ideas. But if you take this h7, bishop f5, there are too many light square weaknesses. That's the problem. And why can't we defend? Yeah, we don't have a pawn on h7 to defend with, and that wouldn't even be that great. So difficult position. What about this? The problem is just this, and we're losing the queen with bishop. Sorry, there's something even more powerful. This. So that doesn't even work. Okay, so this is really hard to defend, basically. That's the point, this move here. So what happens? So yeah, this didn't actually happen in the game, but it would have been interesting. The sack here, and h5. And something like just plugging away at that king. It's just very hard. The king's going to get mated in the end. It's white is doing very well indeed. So it's very tempting. So maybe bishop at g6 is not the best. Bishop at h6 would be another attempt, but attack the queen and go for g2. That looks like an interesting idea for black. And what's another interesting idea? Knight f4, just going straight away with this. Okay, so it's really unclear. Let's say it's an interesting sack. Okay, instead, white put more and more pressure on h5. And black went a little bit too prematurely for the attack. He hasn't really developed his queen side. He went straight away for an attack, and not sure how good that is. Takes. So this knight, maybe he could have taken here and then taken here. But okay, he took this one first, then takes here, check. Probably should have taken the rook in this position, but okay, backs off, develops. Okay, so this is a complicated game. Takes the queen, takes the bishop. So white seems to have managed to regain control in this position. And it's a pretty uncomfortable position. F5. So just to say here, why can't we just take this? Well, the reason we can't take that is not only would queen here be checkmate, but knight takes pawn would also be checkmate. So pretty neat little move there, bishop takes h5. And white's just crashing through, basically. Ooh, yeah, this was just the one moment in the game when white made a mistake. So the correct move here is at f6. So we can't take with the rook, so... But f5 suddenly gave black chances, but very complicated. The complicated chance was knight e5. And I remember Jasugi99 was watching this game and he was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Because everyone was seeing how white is just crushing this game. But then after this move, they were like, oh, whoa, isn't there something here? And I was like, how does he see there's something here? And the reason he sees it is because white only has a queen in hand and he doesn't have mate. Whereas black suddenly, hang on a second, maybe there is something. And basically both Katask and Jasugi99 are in the chat and they see this live, which is really impressive. Like it's not much time here. Look, 29 seconds, 28 seconds. This move was played in like 1 second. And Jasugi99 and Katask were both like, whoa, 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 was there something there? At this point in the match, because this was played, but they're both like, hang on a second. And this is why. There's knight e5, which can't be taken, and now white only has a queen in hand. And the threat is knight at g4, which is very hard to defend with only a queen in hand. There is a really sneaky defense, which with g4 itself, but there's still really nice moves that black can play. Bishop at e8. So defends the king. Bishop here, just controlling this whole diagonal. And what's the idea? Another nice move at some point is knight here. So rook here to stop that idea. Knight at e2. So, takes, 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 takes. Pawn here, check. Pawn here, check. It's just... sorry, so queen g2 isn't... Yeah, queen g2 is a mistake. So I'm just trying to show you, if you do a move like queen g2, there are problems. Because knight takes pawn and pawn here, and we're checkmating this king. But there are better moves than queen g2. You can, after knight e2, you have to just give up the queen for a couple of pieces. Oh, but you can't take with the king, because otherwise this is now mating you. So you have to be careful. You have to go stuff like knight at g6. Defends here, takes, takes, pawn here, takes, 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 takes the rook. So it's a whole complicated position. You can't go h5 attacking that knight, because otherwise this comes. And the point is you win the queen with check. So it's just... Anyway, this is going really deep. So the problem is this is some serious pressure. So you have to do something. Knight g5 check. Takes, takes to defend. Okay, so this is like unclear position. I mean, I'm not analysing this position. The point is that suddenly in this position here, white doesn't have any material to continue the attack. Oh, Apostatlet said, at the start of this game, why did black put his bishop on h8? So I'm going to come back to this position in a second. I'm just going to quickly recap. Why did he put his bishop on h8? So in this position, bishop at h8. Bishop at h8. So he's worried, presumably, about some kind of check here and checkmate if this bishop... He wants to guard the g7 square. Like, it's not necessarily a good move, but that's the reason. He probably wanted to just get... But it does take away a square from the king. Yeah. So if you do nothing, you're losing this one, and I don't know, because the knight is still defending. Okay, but if we did knight takes, then suddenly there are issues. With bishop at h6, we have to take it. Bishop at g5, king h7, queen h6, king g8. Bishop takes knight, threatening mate, but we can just take it back. Oh no, we can't. Oh, yeah, we can, because this knight's protecting the square. So, yeah, I mean, so it's not. Yeah, so it's not clear. So he just wanted to. Okay, so I get what I'd say is bishop at h8 is the philosophy of protecting the square the king is on. So it's just like a, unfortunately it's taking away a square from the king, but it's that philosophy of, if you protect the square the king is on, then when you move it, your opponent can't put pieces on that square. Unfortunately, by doing that, you could smother yourself. But yeah. So, and you see how, as the game continued, that bishop on h8 actually proves to be really useful because it stops the mate on g7. It means here we don't have to take and open up our position. We can sidestep. We can avoid trades, which you want to do if you're being attacked. You want to avoid trades in Crazyhouse. So takes, 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 takes. Check. And yeah, so this bishop on h8 turns into a bit of a hero. Critical position. This was a mistake because now white gets a knight. So this was the key position. He had to get that knight out the way. There's only one place to put it here, and suddenly this becomes a really complicated position. And because white has no pieces, so that's why Jasugi99 and Katas both spotted this instantly. Hang on a second, what's going on here? But now white has pieces, and white is back in control. Bishop here takes the bishop, threatening mate here. And the mate wasn't defended against, so white got the mate. Oof, yeah, a bit of another breathless game, but another win from 264 Brock. So with that, he draws level at 4-4. And mariorton got fed up. I'm not going to continue this setup, fianchetto setup, when I keep on getting beaten. Oh no, he didn't. He continued the fianchetto setup. I'm talking nonsense. And in fact, it's mariorton who changes things up with f5, going for a Dutch defense. And basically the Dutch defense is weak because it weakens f7. So white is better simply because of the weak f7 square. And he's going for a pawn. Why would he want a pawn? He wants a pawn for h6. So black doesn't want to trade pawns. Okay, fair enough. He wants here he wants a knight for f7 maybe. So castles, takes the knight, takes the pawn. And why doesn't black just simply take back? And I think the idea is if you did take back, knight c5 comes, hitting the bishop and hitting this pawn. And maybe you could defend both like this, but then we could take the pawn anyway and bring another knight in, hitting the queen, but also hitting this bishop. But can't you just go back and defend the bishop? You could, but then there's a trap, and you win the piece. And these light squares are a bit weak. And there's also a threat. No, we don't have a knight, but this square is a little bit weak, and this square is a little bit weak. So it's thinking very deep. Why not take this knight? Knight here, lots of crazy ideas. Cabbage just goes straight for the defense. Takes, takes. Rook at d7. At d5 is also interesting, just try and open up a weakness on e6. But okay, rook at d7 also looks interesting. Takes the bishop. Hits e6. Yeah, e6 is a weak square. That's why white's just hitting it again and again. Takes the knight, hits e6 again. It's just very relentless play from mariorton. Takes the rook, puts a rook here, takes the bishop, hits e6 again. Okay, really nice play actually from mariorton, I have to say. He wants to take here, takes and takes here. That's the plan. So if we sidestep, then rook here and there would be a smother, but the other idea would be simply, if we sidestep, takes, takes, and put another knight here. Okay, I'm not sure. Why not sidestep in this position? But okay, apparently bishop takes knight is good for white, even though it looks awkward. Takes. Oh, so you could say, why doesn't black take here? And the reason he doesn't is because then white would take here. And why can't black take here? Apparently this comes. So apparently white would be doing very well in this position. So although it looks scary, this is not bug house. There are no rooks coming. And actually white is winning this. So he doesn't take that knight. He takes back the bishop. Bishop to f3, defending the weakness, and now hitting the queen. Knight takes f3 is check. And in this position, mariorton made a very subtle mistake. He took knight takes f3. And it turns out that knight is really important where it is. Because if you take here with the pawn, then if queen takes, we actually have queen here, check. Takes, with only a rook in hand, that's enough. A knight and rook in hand. Knight here, check. Takes. Because this knight's guarding the square, he has to go sideways. But now rook here is checkmate. Whichever way he goes. King here, rook here, still checkmate. So that's why it was really important to keep this knight hitting g6. Because it actually protects this knight here. By taking with the knight, suddenly this came. Queen takes. Takes, and we don't have the same mate. Queen here check doesn't work. Takes. The king on f8 is totally safe. Bishop protects f7. There's no knight at g6 idea. And in this position, white must have been thinking about queen f8 ideas and lost on time. He had 12 seconds on the clock and lost on time. Presumably trying to calculate this line, which I'll just show you. It'd go like this, and then we don't know what to do. There's no mate. The bishops are defending everything. And that's a threat, and it's not defended. The knight here was also defending this. It was a wonderful knight, basically. Yeah. Hi there, Spinal Tap. Yeah, we've been doing it for about 2 hours now. Just candidates highlights. This stream, just catching up some games which weren't live streamed. Yep, as you said, apostatlet. Yep, the knight on h4, doing such a good job. So the 10th game. So 264 rook. How would you just won 5 in a row? Just come back from love 4 down and taking it to 5-4. And now we're going to look at game 10. And now mariorton mixes it up. He doesn't go for a fianchetto setup as he always does. Now we see for sure. Bishop to e7. He's not gone for the fianchetto setup. He's just gone for a standard London system and mixing it up. And I think rook e1, as I said in my analysis, why do you do rook e1? Maybe you want to push e4 at some point in some distant future. But e4 can be met maybe with d4. Unless you want to go d4 and then e4. But as we'll see in the game, this move rook e1 weakens f2. And that turns out to be why white loses this game. Knight c5, bishop f1, again a slight error. Because the key point with this knight coming to this square is this e4 square is under black's control. And so white needs to go something like d3 to get back the e4 square. Bishop f1 cedes the e4 square, and black takes control in this game. I mean, it's a very subtle positional control. Takes, knight takes f2, and already black is doing very well. The point is, if you go king takes f2, knight at e4, if you step up, knight at g1, king g4, and at f5 is mate. Everything is covered. There's a wall here, and there's a bishop cutting off this diagonal and the pawn cutting off this diagonal. So you can't step up. You can't sidestep either, because knight at g1 creates the same issue. Kind of funny, just pushing the king over here. King comes here, and queen will mate. So the queen comes in, checks, but also defends this pawn. So that's pretty funny. So the king basically, after this move, would be forced to step back to here, and that's not a good look. here, and we can just take here. And with threat is knight at f2, rook at h1 mate, and it's basically impossible to stop. So it's mate in 11 in this position. So Spinal Tap, yeah, there will be recap stuff, I'm sure, of the double elimination, but it hasn't. That's for another stream. And it needs also help. It needs people to help submit positions and interesting positions. I collected a few myself from the double elim, but I haven't had any help from anyone to do it. And even for this, I collected 7 positions so far from the candidates, and really this is just looking at a series that didn't get attention when it was played, because it was played at 2 in the morning European time. So no one was streaming it, unfortunately. So this is why this knight can't get taken. So queen f3 was played, but yeah, knight comes back, and so mariorton's got a very healthy position, and he's not going to mess it up, basically. And the rest of the game is just so he throws in a check, takes on f3, knight takes d2, reveal check from the rook. Bishop takes, can go queen takes if you want, but knight e4 check instead. Rook here check, queen takes, and f2 checkmate. So that was, yeah. So probably in this position, white should have gone king g2 to make mating a little bit more difficult. So then f3 check, king h1, rook g1 check would be the neat idea. Takes, queen takes pawn, and then the mate is actually give away the queen, drop pawns, but keep the f2 square free for the knight. So drop pawns, but bring in the knight for f2. So that's the kind of idea. If I go all the way back here, actually, he doesn't have to go back to h1. He could take this pawn, but then rook at f2 is mate straight away, so that doesn't work. And if you go to here directly, it's just f2 and rook here is checkmate. So that's why in this position, king h1 is the most difficult move to face. You draw the king out, and that would have been a little bit harder to find this mate. Okay. So mariorton did win this game, but he won because the king came to e2. That made the mate a lot easier. Queen takes pawn and pawn at f2. In fact, he didn't need the queen takes pawn. He could have just gone pawn at f2 directly. Okay. So that's it. I was planning in the stream to go on and discuss TheFinnisher against Kleerkast and Blitzbullet against Dog Answer, but maybe I'll save that up for another night or later tonight. I'll give everyone a break, so in 15 minutes time you should all tune in to Kleerkast. Or should I keep going? Maybe I'll yeah. What do people want? Should I keep going until Kleerkast starts streaming in 45 minutes, or I think we've gone a bit deep and we need a break. It was 4 love, then 4-5, and then 5-5 finish exactly. So let's just hear, like, do people have energy to continue? I can continue if people want to, or else do people want to break before Blitzbullet takes on Opperwaisen in 45 minutes? Apostat that's got energy to keep going, which is impressive because he's been here since the beginning. Okay. So the second match that didn't have a live stream was TheFinnisher against Kleerkast. And this was one of the most exciting matches in the double elimination because Kleerkast took TheFinnisher to tiebreaks 5-5 after 10 games, and it went 6-6, 7-7, 8-8, 9-9, not 9-9, 8-8, and then the finisher finally broke 9-8, 10-8. So it was a huge match. Oh, thanks so much. I passed out that. So it was one of the. I think there were 3 matches in the double elimination which went to 10-8, and I'm not sure if any match went longer. So Kleerkast really took it to the finisher. The finisher did prevail to end the double elimination unbeaten, 5 straight wins to get into the candidates. Kleerkast had to qualify through the elimination bracket, which he did. So they met again in the candidates, but this time the finisher came better prepared. And we're going to see a lot of masterclasses in this series between the finisher and Kleerkast. And really, I should watch from the finisher's perspective, but the way I set it up on the study was from Kleerkast's perspective. But you should be looking how the opposition plays, because the finisher really played very well. So e6, going for a French, knight f3. Now, the standard French is you go for the advanced variation, you stick your bishop here, and you hit the dark squares. But it seems maybe the finisher's saving up that prep for another match, and instead goes for the slightly quieter exchange on e4. Knight f6 takes, and interestingly, this is less often played because of the queen can get harassed quite a bit. I mean, this is played sometimes, but the queen will probably be lost for a couple of pieces at some point. And this is actually fine for black, but it's less often played because people don't like losing their queen too much. So more often g takes f6 is played, and that's what Kleerkast played in this position. Knight at h5, so the idea is you want to drop a pawn on g7. So black drops a pawn on g7, but in doing so he's wasted his pawn, and white meanwhile is going to be dropping a pawn on h6 if ever this bishop moves. So white has a slight edge. Bishop d3. Yeah, now there's something actually really amazing in this position. So, and no one's ever seen this. So this is like complete novelty that no one's ever seen. So there's a trick in standard chess, is you don't do this and win a pawn. And you don't do it because of this. And suddenly you lose your queen. And you can't say move your queen back because it gets taken. So this is a like so. And in this position we've won a piece and a pawn for our queen. So in standard chess, we're just getting thrashed here. And no one, of course, has played this in Crazyhouse. But what's really amazing in this position is actually this is okay for black. A pawn and a piece for the queen. It's actually okay. And the reason is pawn at e7, really nasty move from white. So okay, what do I mean by okay? Engine says 0-0 basically, or maybe +3, but it's not sure. The idea white would have to find this beautiful move at e7, and the idea is, of course, if you take, then you're getting toasted. Yeah, knight takes g7 comes, king here. Knight takes. I should have saved this line. Knight takes e6. So you don't go directly for queen. No, the queen. You can't go for this. You have to go knight takes e6 check. You can't go here because queen would be mate. You can't go here because a new knight at g7 would be mate. So you have to take this knight. Now at g7, and the idea is knight here and queen here is, and pawn here is basically mate. So maybe you do this, but that doesn't help you much because knight at h6, king takes, and queen f7 is mate. So maybe you come up to g6, but that doesn't help you at all because queen f7 is mate. Okay, so, and I'll show you this line again. King takes here, knight at h5, king g6, queen at g7. If you step down, then there's also queen at g7 and pawn here is checkmate. King takes here, and queen here checkmate. Okay, so you can't take that pawn. again, there is a defense here, which is knight at d3. What a crazy looking move. And the point is, if pawn takes knight, knight here picks up the queen. And if the king steps into the line of fire of this bishop, then you have a discovery which looks kind of annoying, and potential knight d3 check again, and so on. So that's not good. So actually white's, and then if you do this, then there's actually bishop at h6, and suddenly this is defended, so we can take this next. So yeah, that's knight e3, and then we can take bishop takes e7. He could take our knight, but yeah, apparently this is okay for black. But actually the best move for white is to give up the queen, throw in a check, takes the queen, and then takes back like so. So you use the bishop to protect. The bishop is still protecting g7. And if you take over that bishop, we could... yeah, so kind of ideas like this. So you take off the knight, and it's still unclear, because now suddenly white can attack with the pawn at d7 and so on. Let's say it's an unclear position, very unclear position, but interesting. So knight at d3 is the move. So in this position, at e7 is the move for white. Possibly at e7, sorry, is the move for white. But there's knight at d3 response. But otherwise, this bishop's really annoying. It's stopping white from casting. So yeah, really just crazy. This whole idea, no one would ever think of it, because everyone knows, every decent player knows from standard chess, that you lose your queen. So it would take some really high level thinking to even think of this. Oh yeah, so good question. What do I do if they don't find at d7? So takes, bishop here, takes. So if they do like a standard move, like pawn at d3, the point is this queen is now it's out in the open, so you just harass the queen. That would be one plan. So knight here check, both defends and harasses the queen. That would be one idea. Another idea is you want to block off this file. So knight at e5 apparently is interesting. No, knight at e5 is interesting. Knight at e5. Oh, knight at e5 going for... Okay, I'm going to have to just delete all of these bad suggestions I've just written. Not knight at d5, knight at e5. So you're threatening knight here next. And whether you castle or not, knight at f3 next is the threat. So knight at e5 apparently is what the engine is suggesting. Yeah, suppose pawn here. Yeah, so knight at e5 is one. Yeah, probably pawn here is also quite an interesting move. Knight at e5, knight at f5. These are some possible ideas. Unclear. Bishop at b4 is another one. It's unclear. What if he does knight here, attacking the bishop? What's the move here? Again, the problem is you want to stop this knight at d3 threat, which is really weird move. So that's why you want to do something blocking. I think at d3 is an interesting move, but apparently knight e5 is annoying. Knight e5. So why can't we just defend this square somehow? Like we just did this. The problem, yeah, then knight takes d3 comes. It's kind of annoying. So yeah, it's just so knight e5 is just really annoying. You're threatening just to take here. That's what you're threatening, as well as to put a knight on f3. Is rook d8 an option? Is rook d8 an option? After this, rook d8. So apparently white has some threats here, which you have to be careful about. Knight takes f6, takes, queen takes f6. That would be the problem. And he has a queen in hand as well, so that's So the threat is knight here check, takes, and queen here checkmate. That's the problem. And knight at e5 actually stops this, because then it takes, we just take right, we're fine. So knight at e5 has that purpose as well, which I didn't realize. So yeah. So anyway, no Crazyhouse player has ever seen this before. It's because no one's stupid enough to try. What happens if I do take this anyway? And I was just looking just out of interest. I knew that there's this, but I was just looking out of interest. And it's weird that it's kind of playable. So probably maybe white has this so directly. That might be the refutation. Queen takes f3 6. That might be the refutation actually. Yeah, because the engine thinks +5 here, so that would be a bit of a problem. So maybe this whole line doesn't work, but it's interesting that it requires such crazy refutation. So yeah, knight takes f6 is probably the refutation. Takes, queen takes f6, and now knight g7 is a threat, so we have to do something to defend e7 or g7. So probably something like at e7. Yeah, but engine is liking white the more it thinks about it. For reasons I don't understand, it wants to go queen takes pawn here. And it thinks if we take, we get mated apparently. This is sorry, knight at g5 is mating here, which is a shame. So it's not much here. So this and then this, and white's crashing through. Okay, so that's the real reason why you don't take the pawn. It's nothing to do with losing the queen. It's this crazy knight takes f6, which I didn't see. Okay, so that's the problem with weak engines. So instead, knight at b4 was played, and bishop b5. Apparently bishop e4 is better. Bishop b4, f5 takes the knight, and h3. So why is bishop b5 not quite as good? It's not quite as good because of this move which Kleerkast found, queen d5, hitting knight and bishop, basically forcing this. Knight has to defend. Ooh, and that's a real concession, moving the knight back. Because now suddenly white doesn't have an attack anymore. And probably if you had to insist on the attack, that would have been interesting. Takes. Anyway, who knows? That would have been. And this is an unclear position, so not clear who's winning. So that's just going straight for the attack. Going straight for the attack, and then you want a castle. Why are we doing queen takes knight? We're going queen takes knight. Sorry, knight takes pawn. We're going knight takes pawn just to get a pawn for h3, and if you take, we're taking here. That's the problem. So you don't want that. You give up the queen. When you can't defend, counterattack. You don't want to be getting into a cycle of knight takes pawn, queen takes knight. That's bad. So when you can't defend, counterattack, check, and it looks scary, this queen winning a rook, but actually, yeah, this is really double-edged, basically. No, I can't say who's winning this. So that would have been interesting. Instead, TheFinnisher played a bit more passively with knight back to g3, and so it's unclear now who's winning. Bishop a6 stops white from castling, hits the knight, and the interesting move in this position apparently was bishop at e4. So if you take, takes back with check, hits the queen. Okay, we're threatening this as well. So why can't we just take the knight? I've forgotten this. The idea is if we take the knight, takes back, knight here. I can't remember how this is going. At e2, I don't know why. Takes. Oh, e2 is defended. That's the problem. So why can't we take? Oh, okay. This is the reason. Oh yeah. Okay, I remember now. So the point is, if ever white takes back on e2, we're taking on f3, and that's looking scary. Because if you take back here, this is very bad. Queen takes, and ideas of knight at g2 are coming. Takes, knight at g2 comes anyway, and you can't go here because this check, this checkmate. I mean, it's a bit much. But okay, the real point of this whole thing is, sorry, just going back. So knight goes back to g3. Okay, this is really annoying. At the moment, e2 is defended, sure, but bishop e4 is still very interesting because we can stick a pawn on e2 potentially. If you give us a pawn, we can stick that pawn on e2. So that's why you can't really take here. Because you take back, stick the pawn on e2, and that will cut the defense of f3. So really advanced idea there, with the bishop on e4 rather than g4. But okay, and e4 is better because it has this idea, but it also has this idea. That's the point. Okay, but we see something similar happening, but with bishop on g4. Hits the queen, takes, and again, you could have gone for knight takes here, and if queen takes and queen takes f3 is annoying, so knight takes. But if knight takes, then this is going too deep. But okay, pawn here is the point, and we're taking on here next. Okay, so knight takes was an idea, but instead, Kleerkast just moved the queen, hits the queen. Yeah, this queen is getting harassed. Takes, bishop at d2, takes, knight g2 check, sidesteps. Because if takes, yeah, sidesteps, takes the bishop, takes the knight, takes here. Okay, this is I'm going. So this is actually okay. This is actually the key point in this game. So in this position, Kleerkast took the knight, but the knight is pinned. So probably the best approach in this position was to keep that tension. So as to take this bishop and put pressure on. So keep the tension in the position. So maybe that was the one mistake from Kleerkast this game. Queen takes, but then he found this interesting idea. Queen takes knight at g, king takes g2, knight at f4 check, king h2. And the best move here is actually just to take the queen. But instead he does bishop at d6, and the reason that's a mistake is the queen can just run away, and there's no good discovery. Black only has a knight in hand. Black has absolutely nothing at all in this position. He hasn't got the queen, he hasn't got any good discovery. So this was a really big blunder. He should have just taken the queen while he could. But he went for this, and the finisher missed it, and so he had a second chance. He took the queen next time. He runs away from the mate on e7, and then, well, then the game went really sharp. Queen takes f3, and white played. So white engine doesn't see it at low depth, but white has mate here. So queen takes f3 is actually a mistake. So yeah, in this position, just take the queen. Black's completely win it. Sorry. Take the queen. Oh, maybe he's not completely winning. Hang on. Take the queen. Check. Check. Oh, okay. I'm confused. Takes. So who's winning this position? Yeah, white is winning anyway. Oh, interesting. Ah, okay. I misread the whole thing. So if black was going to win, he had to not release the tension. He had to do something like bishop here in this position. Yeah. Having released the tension, this is a really good try. This is a really good try. The reason he does this, bishop at d6, is actually defensive. He recognizes that if knight takes queen, at d7 is probably mating him. And it's not... Basically, best defense is actually king f8, and then there's not an obvious mate, but it's really... Yeah, it's really bad for black. Just queen here doesn't quite work, apparently, because bishop here, and doesn't have time to take this rook, apparently, because then black would have mate, which is pretty impressive. With only a knight and a queen, you would actually have a mate here, because knight here check, knight takes knight at g3, queen takes pawn check. knight at h3, and with that knight you've got here, this square is defended, so you have to go here. Knight e3 check, the point is just to take away the defender of g3, after which you'd be winning because you have to block and then pawn here is checkmate. So you have to come back to here, but then, well, this would be hard to see, but you have to give away the queen to go knight g5 check. Knight takes pawn check. And these squares are all covered. So if you step up, pawn here is checkmate, but if you step down, pawn here is still checkmate. Or you could also go knight f4 checkmate. But okay. You can't, oh yes, yeah, so king f8 was important, because if you take this, then you've got a knight, a queen, a pawn, basically, is the pattern. Knight at c5, king e7, queen at d7, king f8. Oh, there's no pawn. Sorry, there's no pawn. But, oh, you can get a pawn. Knight takes e6, f takes e6, pawn at e7. And if this, then it's simple. Double check. So you have to go here, but then you do the same thing. Bishop here check, drawing you to the square, and then double checkmate. So that's the pattern. Sorry, yeah, okay. So if knight takes queen, pawn here, queen here, takes, bishop here, why not take the bishop? I'm guessing knight here and knight here. That's my guess. So knight at c8 is correct. If king takes d7, it's a very simple mate. No, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not. I thought it was a simple mate. Yeah, the engine didn't see it for a while. Yeah, these two knights cover these squares and these squares. So you can't just run away. I mean, you can't go here, queen here will be mate. You have to take it. But the moment you take it, queen here is mate. So yeah, I saw that one. But apparently the mate could get a bit longer after rook takes, rook takes, and I'm guessing rook here would be the move. And yeah, engine confirms that's the move. King takes rook, and we get the same old pattern with the knight and the queen. You have to run away. Queen here, you have to run away. We need a pawn, and we don't have any pawns. So lucky that we have knight takes e6 check. Takes, pawn at e6. Now this is slightly different because now we can run away. We have no bishop for f7. It's no good though. Queen takes rook, we just eat up all the blockers. And the moment he runs here, just promote to queen checkmate. Yeah. So that's this pattern. Knight here keeps him in a box. And of course, if you go here, it's very simple. Just queen here, queen takes rook, and smother. So it's very important to keep running and to keep using that rook as a defender. And then, okay, that was completely crazy. The fact that you can't just take their rook. That's just completely crazy. This is just nuts. So that's the easy one. The hard one was king h2. That's just completely nuts. Knight at g5, just absolutely incredible. Takes f3 and that's mate apparently. That's it. Kind of. So the way to think about it is these two knights are covering those 4 squares, and this knight is covering these 2 squares, and this knight is blocked by his own piece. So that's why it's mate. But okay, that's some crazy stuff. So going all the way back, that's why he did bishop at d6. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Bishop at d6 was really a defensive move because he realized he was in big trouble. It turns out going king f8, king g8, that there was a possibility of surviving, so I shouldn't call it a blunder. It was actually quite a neat idea. So bishop at d6 was a defensive move. The problem is the finisher should have just taken here, and white is up a whole house, and black has nothing. But instead, this happened. He won the queen, and suddenly Black's got some chances, but actually not very good chances. White's still winning, apparently. And White's still winning. White has mate in this position. So you always have to watch out. Two knights, a queen, and a diagonal is often mate. But it's not always straightforward, especially when the f6 square is so well guarded. So you can't sidestep because of the classic mate. That's obvious. It's called the smothered mate. Okay, we've all seen that one. So you have to take it. That's easy. Now normally you want to go knight at f6, put a diagonal on g7, swing the knight back, and then deliver mate. But we can't put it on f6, so instead put it here, king h8, and we have a diagonal to draw him up. But now we can't swing back. But we do have this. We can't step back or queen g7 is mate, so we have to take it. And now bishop at g5. Takes, and again, if you step back, just pawn here, and yeah, you can't ever go, the knight is covering these two squares. So if you step back, pawn here and queen here is just checkmate. So you have to take it. You don't even need the queen, but if you take it, then you're also mated with the queen here. So it cuts off on this side, and the knight's cutting off here. And that final position you should always keep in your mind. The queen and the knight, 3 away diagonally, is a very beautiful position, because the knight covers the light squares, and the queen covers both the row and the column, but also the dark squares along the diagonal. So it's a very important mating pattern, the queen and the knight. So just to play through that mate again, it's knight at h3, and you have to take it. Knight at e7. Draw the king up, and then draw him up along diagonals. And you don't even need the queen to finish, just a pawn will mate. But you need the queen if he comes up. Queen here, checkmate. So white had mate, but he didn't see it, and instead white played here. And now Kleerkast black has mate, and Kleerkast found the mate. And it's a very beautiful mate. Knight here, check, forces king here, and now the bishop's pinned. So knight here, check, king here, let's checkmate. Simple. You're taking away the defender of the bishop. That pawn defended the bishop, and checkmate. So, wow, another very interesting first game. Kleerkast taking it against TheFinnisher, and it was all a very tense game the whole time. But maybe just the one point when Kleerkast really should have, I mean, he was lucky in the end to win. Probably the most interesting point was doing something like this in this position. And okay, so Engine says it's fairly equal, but it's very uncomfortable. Because the point is, if you just do this, then there's this, with like a double attack on these two squares. So then black is certainly winning. And it's just very hard to see how to defend. Knight at g1 might be one way of defending it. That doesn't work very well. You just take it anyway. I mean, I don't get it. For some reason, now it thinks this whole sequence works better with that extra pawn in hand. That's interesting. Just that extra pawn in hand, this is now mating. Because what happened in the game was king h2, but the difference now is at g3. And why can't we just take it? Knight g4. Oh, this is scary. Because now suddenly we're winning the queen with check. Ah, so that's the thing. You either take it or king takes, and you're winning the queen with check. So that extra pawn makes such a difference. King g1, we win the queen with check, and that's never going to be good news. If you're ever winning the queen with check, that's just bad news. King takes pawn is mate. So that's why, yeah, in this position, I mean, the engine says it's equal, this position, but I think the more it thinks it, the more it will hate White's position, because White's just tied down, can't do anything. He can't take here, because otherwise this comes. He can't defend this, because otherwise Black just takes it anyway. and then does this whole idea. And at g3 is enough to yes, hang on a second. So in the game, what happened? Check in the game, just going back to the game. Queen takes g2, knight here, check. Why can't we do something like, oh, because there's a pawn here. Okay, yeah. So we never got this knight here idea. Yeah. So not only was it winning the pawn, it's winning this pawn, which was a defender of the king. So okay, interesting ideas. Okay, the finisher would bounce back, as we'll see in game 2. The finisher, as I said, is black, and this is just this is how to play black against d4, d5. So we just watch this and say, this is how to play it. h6, g5, fianchetto, and castle. Just very good. And maybe maybe the best move here for white is just bishop d3, then knight here, and just this is a game between Opperwesen as white and the finisher. So this would maybe be a slightly better way of playing for white. So how do we do it? We move the bishop first. Why is moving the knight straight away a bad idea? If you're moving the knight straight away, you're initiating trades, but white isn't developed yet. White isn't castled. White isn't quite ready for a fight. So if we go bishop d3 first, okay, and then do this, get the queen out the way, open up the h-file, back off, hitting the bishop maybe, defend, bring the rook in. Okay, so this is a game between Opperwesen and the finisher, and it shows this is really beautiful. Okay, so we're hitting h6, takes. Why not knight takes? Yeah, engine actually likes knight takes, but okay, f takes is interesting. Bishop e6. So why bishop e6? Because he must be worried about some sacks on f7 at some point. But okay, knight h5, knight f6, knight takes g7, king takes g7. Okay, now here, this is the critical point. And I mean, this is like slight distraction. This Opperwesen finisher game. And Opperwesen had a really brilliant idea, but it actually has a slight flaw in it. And the brilliant idea, and this is what happened in the game, was e4, opening up this diagonal, takes, and don't take back, go straight in, rook takes h6. Sorry, and king takes rook would be automatic, but it doesn't work because queen takes g5. This is insane. You have to take it, and bishop at f4 is checkmate. Gosh, so obviously the finisher does not take it, and instead I can't remember what happens in the game. But this was a very powerful idea, this rook takes h6. I mean, this is a very, very powerful idea. But there's a refutation. So the idea is takes, rook takes h6. There's a brilliant refutation, which wasn't found in the game. And the refutation is e3. And why is that a refutation? Because then if queen takes e3, oops, that's embarrassing. We lose the queen. Okay, well, why not just f takes e3? Okay, but now we can take the rook, and the diagonal's blocked. We're totally safe. That's no good. What about rook takes h7? So we sack the rook first, and then we take e3. Fine, but black's actually better here, slightly better. And can even think about moves like this, and this, winning a pawn. So and white has no attack. So a really brilliant idea from Opper, this and this, but it has a beautiful refutation of this. Really beautiful refutation, and the best you can do here is rook takes bishop and sack that rook. So what should Opper instead have done in this position? his idea is absolutely spot on, is to attack along this diagonal. And the move in this position, which is slightly surprising, but black can't really refute it, is actually to go f4. And you do the same kind of things, but you don't allow this idea. So it was absolutely a brilliant idea from Opper, but this is the way to do it. And yeah, and actually it's very difficult to defend for black. I mean, the engine will say +4, but it's the sort of thing. If takes, bishop takes, at g5, you're just taking again. You're getting a bishop on h6. This is just uncomfortable. Bishop takes g5. Okay, an engine still says only +2, but you can, because it's found, oops, bishop at g3, we've created a bit of a weakness with that f4 move. So it's not so clear, but we're quite well defended. Yeah, so bishop takes knight, pawn takes. Okay, so the more the engine thinks, it's really not sure. I mean, maybe it's a slight edge for white, certainly a slight edge for white, but because the white king's slightly safer. But nothing decisive. Bishop takes e7, queen takes, and maybe try and get something on f6, pawn on f6. Okay, yeah, engine really isn't sure who's winning. It just thinks queen d7, and maybe black's okay. But okay, so what was the point of all this? The point of all this was to say that the move here in this position is really bishop d3. And the finisher will just show you a real why this is a bad idea. So take that knight and go straight in for an attack. And we don't want to open up this d file just yet because our king isn't castled. So bishop d3, takes. This is slightly annoying, hitting our queen. And why are we hitting the queen? Okay, so a very defensive reason for hitting the queen is you take the bishop and stick a bishop on g6. Our black king is very safe. Kleerkast doesn't like this, so goes for the queen sack, and the finisher doesn't even want the queen. Instead, he wants to take that bishop and take the queen this way. So he gets the queen in the end, but in a different way, which is interesting. Bishop g4, so threatening mate in 1. Castles to defend, and black is crushing here, but black is not crushing with the move that the finisher did, which is king takes. I mean, black is still doing okay. The reason why black is crushing here is because of knight at e2, king h1, take this bishop, f takes, take this rook, and in the meantime, white has no attack with this knight next to the king, so rook takes, and stick a queen on the second rank. Bishop takes, just sack the queen, put a rook on the back rank. And, well, you've got to be careful here. You don't have time to actually go rook takes bishop. Or it turns out maybe white does have some attacking ideas with knight at g4, knight takes h6. It's too sharp for the engine, basically. So in these sorts of positions, okay, material is nice, but going for threatened mate in 1 is even stronger. Knight here, check, rook here, so still threatening mate in 1. Notice you cannot do this, because that's checkmate. So you have to defend again. Takes the rook, throw in a check, block. So always just keep on trying to threaten mate is the idea in this sort of position. Keep on trying to threaten mate. Takes. So white has no time to attack you back. He has to keep on defending against the mates is the idea. Knight here, check, takes, rook takes. And now that white's put on the queen, now he doesn't really have the mate threats that he had before. Takes the queen, takes back, takes here. Black's surely doing very well here. Takes here, takes, and then the moment the knight comes back, just do this, defend. Okay, so that would have been really a very powerful way for black to play. Just to go, the key move here was, knight here, check, takes, and just basically rip off all white's pieces. But okay, instead he went for king takes g7 and f3. So unfortunately knight e2 still comes, and this is still getting a lot of pieces ripped off. Takes. Yeah, interestingly, this is stronger, apparently, but it's very unclear. Because takes, king sidesteps. It's just too sharp for me to say too much. White can defend with bishop h2. So instead he goes for the aggressive option, does the finisher. And it turns out knight f2 here, defending g4, is actually pretty strong. Pawn here, just step here, king on h3 is actually fairly safe. But instead he went for king h3 directly, and that turns out to be a mistake because of knight f2, takes, now we're threatening rook h2 mate, so we have to block it with the bishop, and then we hit the bishop, defend, takes, hit it again, defend it, take it the other way. Queen takes knight, sacking the queen, bringing the other queen in, and that's checkmate. So really, really beautiful game from the finisher, like real masterclass from the finisher, except, yeah, probably here, block and then go king h3 was stronger, and probably here he shouldn't have taken the knight, he should have gone straight for the kill. But still, a very, very well played game, and really showing how to play this kind of system against this aggressive knight e5. So, 1-1, and we go into game 3. And game 3 is... And we've got 5 minutes to go until Opperweisen plays Blitz Bullet, so I guess we're going to have to abort. Knight at h5, at g7, c3. c3 is a bit of a strange move. Defending this pawn. Why does he want to defend this pawn again? Queen d5, excellent move from Kleerkast. Knight drops back, so Kleerkast is doing well as black here so far. I don't really have any commentary on these moves. H takes g3, takes on f2. Seems like black's hitting. Well, apparently white's doing well here, but okay. So what's the mistake if black's doing well? It doesn't like. Apparently it likes h5 here, but on low depth. But okay. Takes. Nice aggressive stuff from Kleerkast. But takes the queen is a mistake. This was the correct thing to do. King takes f2, knight. These sorts of ideas. Maybe. But okay. Had to give up the queen. Instead he goes for the sharp line. Takes here, check, takes the rook, and white maybe has a slight edge. But okay, this is all very sharp. Check, sidestep, rook at h5, check, blocks, queen to defend, pin. I guess I don't have too much commentary so far. E takes d4, queen takes, bishop takes. So hits the queen. Unfortunately there's a double check, so hitting the queen is no good. And we're going to get a mate soon, because we're getting the queen with check. So what would have been a better defense? Yeah, so queen takes d6 didn't work because of bishop at d8. Takes. Yeah. Okay, so it's pretty dire. What? Yeah, actually a really nice game. I mean, the finisher didn't do much wrong all game basically. So let's just play through it. What really brutal play from the finisher. Just defended, so counterattacks the queen and just goes for this counter, defends accurately, and there's nothing to be done. And then just goes for a counterattack, gets a knight, puts the knight here, hitting this weak d6 square, and then just takes that weak d6 square, double check, and gets the mate. So yeah, ruthless. Crushing attack, as Apostat says. 2 minutes to go. I think I just have to raid Kleerkast now. When he starts up. So game 2-1 to the finisher at this point, and Kleerkast goes for a safe setup. We're going to see how that safe setup just gets crashed open. With the knight. Okay, so this is actually really important. It's actually something to remember. If your opponent is fianchettoing like this is a really good setup with knights here and here, and bishop on d6. This is a really good setup against the fianchetto, and maybe piece for 2 pawns on g3. Just very good. Backtracks. He's just backing up because he wants to put a diagonals on here and here. Knight attempting to defend. Okay, sidesteps. He's trying desperately to defend his dark squares, but black is just crushing through. Takes, takes, tries to defend, takes, takes, knight here check, knight takes pawn check, ouch, and it's already a forced mate. Check. So at this point, actually, white already resigns in this position because there's pawn here check, knight here check, bishop here check, and pawn here is checkmate. Yeah, bishop here is checkmate. So the two knights and pawns are mating, basically. What else could he do? King takes, knight h4, king g3. Yeah, because if he steps back, it's just mate in 1. So that's why he has to step forward. King h1 is the same as mate in 1. So he has to step forward. Bishop h2. This is really nice. The knight on f3 supports the bishop on h2. And you just drive the king up towards your pawns. Okay, so I'm going to just quickly check to see if Kleerkast has started. Well, if someone gives me a shout out when he starts, then I'll rate him. Otherwise, let's keep going. That's another really strong game from TheFinnisher. The final score was something like 8-2 for TheFinnisher. So, now the current score is 3-1. And again, this is a very strong idea. So notice how white delays this move and this move. So when here, if this had moved out and this happened, we could just take it. And if this had moved out, you couldn't push f3. So notice how white pushes his pawns, delays the knights. Normally you move your knights first, right? You delay the knight in order to go f3. And the thing to normally do about this knight is just leave it there. Get a pawn for it and say f2 is a weakness. It's worth it. And what I'd say about this position is maybe before going knight e4, I'd go a6 first and just get rid of this pin. Maybe that would be my recommendation. Okay, Kleerkast live. So what happened in the game is we just get another opening beauty from TheFinnisher with e6. If you don't take it, you're just dying on f7. If you do take it, you can never develop this bishop. And just playing through what happens, he's just desperately trying to develop his bishop, and he does eventually, but it just takes a long time. Takes here, he finally gets his bishop out, but by the time he does, he's already lost. This pawn is falling, the d file is opening, takes, takes, pawn here, and black resigned. So that was 4-1, the final score was 8-2, and we'll be back with the rest of this another time. Let's just try and raid. Raid Kleerkast chess. Probably the easiest. I could raid it here. Maybe the easiest way of doing it is from the stream manager. Okay, they're playing now. Wonderful. I'm just going to raid. I'm going to do it from the stream manager. It's easiest. So I'll see you later for. I'm just doing this in case I got the underscore wrong. What, is Kleerkast not live? Kleerkast chess is live. Excellent. Start the raid. Are we ready to go? Is this working? 9 viewers are ready to raid. Yes, 10 viewers are ready to raid. Let's go. Let's raid Kleerkast. Let's see if this is working. Okay, bye guys, and thanks for watching.